Temperatures could get close to freezing, certainly in rural areas, and there could be some stubborn fog patches here, so through parts of Yorkshire and Lincolnshire in particular. And if we do see some fog here, well, it may well last for much of Thursday. We should see that cloud and rain starting to pull away from northern Scotland, likely to stay fairly damp in Shetland for most of the day. But elsewhere, as I said at the start, it is generally cloudy but dry. Temperatures still a touch above average, although not quite as mild as today. And if that fog does stick around, well, temperatures could be very much more suppressed. Through Thursday evening, again, a few holes in the cloud could allow some fog patches to form, parts of North Wales and, again, the northeastern quarter of the UK. Generally just a lot of cloud across the south as we head into Friday. That weather front moving away from northern Scotland, so generally dry, bar the odd little bit of drizzle here and there. Again, some stubborn fog patches are possible on Friday. Again, some brightness, particularly across northern Scotland. Should be fairly sunny for the Highlands across to Aberdeenshire. North Wales also may well see some sunny spells, but for most places it's just looking overcast and grey, as it will do into the weekend. Increasing chance for seeing some thick fog, but generally staying dry and cloudy, but also steadily turning colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Very good morning, 6 o'clock, Thursday the 16th of December. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on the Great British Breakfast with me, Simon McCoy, and Rosie Wright.
A very wary Christmas. The public's being urged to scale back plans in the run-up to the festivities following the rapid spread of the Omicron variant as COVID cases hit their highest level ever recorded. So what do you plan to do in the next few days? Let us know, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And if you've got any questions, we're speaking to the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, this hour.
Tory rebels turn up the heat on the Prime Minister, warning things must change by next year or he will have to go, after delivering the biggest blow to his premiership with nearly 100 of his own MPs turning against him.
A mother who allowed her 16-month-old daughter to be murdered by her lover. The mother will be freed in just 4 years. While the toddler's killer laughed in the dock when she was sentenced, she's going to serve a minimum of 25 years. Has justice been served?
Business groups are calling on the government to help companies suffering in the wake of booking cancellations spurred by the Omicron variant. So what else should the government be doing to help business?
And it's day one of the second Ashes test in Adelaide, and England had a bonus before a ball was bowled, with the Aussie captain Pat Cummins forced to self-isolate. We'll have the latest throughout the morning with former England player Stuart Meaker.
OK, let's take you through some of the front pages this morning. The Metro leads with the story that mortuary, vulture and double murderer David Fuller, who spent years abusing more than 100 corpses of women and girls in hospital mortuaries, he'll spend the rest of his life in prison.
The Independent says cut down on socialising to save Christmas. They report Chris Whitty's warning that Brits should deprioritise non-essential gatherings in order to preserve their family Christmas.
Scale back Christmas plan, says The Telegraph. It reports the public are being urged to cut back on socialising in the run-up to Christmas, with England's chief medical officer suggesting people should only attend events they consider a priority.
Don't mix with your friends if you don't have to, warns the Eye. That's the same line that we heard from the government briefing yesterday on Omicron. Plus, the paper carries an exclusive with the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, who predicts voters will no longer give Boris the benefit of the doubt.
It's Boris versus the scientists, reports the Daily Mail, which homes in on the contrast between Professor Whitty's downbeat assessment of Omicron and a call for people to avoid unnecessary mixing, and the Prime Minister's upbeat message that Christmas events should go ahead, describing it as a sign of divisions between scientists and Number 10.
Wary Xmas is how the Daily Mirror signs up the advice issued by Professor Chris Whitty yesterday, who, the paper says, begged festive revellers to only socialise with those who really matter, just hours after the UK saw its highest number of daily COVID cases since the start of the pandemic.
Same story features on the front page of The Guardian, which quotes Professor Whitty's sobering prediction that coronavirus records will be broken a lot over the next few weeks as the UK is hit by the Delta variant and the rapidly growing number of Omicron infections.
The Times has Professor Whitty's comments. They suggest that they contrasted directly with the Prime Minister Boris Johnson regarding socialising around Christmas. Whitty also said, although people must think carefully before going to events, the government was not cancelling parties.
And The Express wishes everyone a very sensible Christmas, the best kind, following pleas for people to have a long, hard think about what social interactions they have. Plus, millions face a cost of living crisis after inflation soars to a 10-year high.
Aliens are among us, says The Star. The paper quotes the actor Danny Dyer, who says there's no doubt that there is extraterrestrial life. At least that's what a bloke down the old Vic in EastEnders told him.
If Danny Dyer says it must be true, says the paper. The best bit is at the bottom. Soap star insists the truth is out there. Brilliant. Only The Star. We love them. I don't know if you were watching Chris Whitty and Boris Johnson yesterday. Do email us. Let us know. It was quite interesting having the two of them standing there and Professor Whitty clearly very, very concerned with what's happening and what he fears over the next few weeks. Boris Johnson sober in his assessment, but as we've been saying, suggesting that things should carry on as normal. Let us know which side of those two you veered towards as you were watching that news conference yesterday. It'd be interesting.
Of course, what we heard then was that the UK has recorded its highest number of daily COVID cases since the beginning of the pandemic, with 78,610 new cases reported yesterday. That's 10,000 cases above the previous record, and that was in January's lockdown, almost 20,000 more than the previous day. Now, England's chief medical officer that we've been talking about, Chris Whitty, warned more records could be broken in the coming weeks as we head into the festive season.
Well, speaking alongside him, Prime Minister Boris Johnson urged everyone to keep calm this Christmas, but carry on testing.
We're not cancelling events, we're not closing hospitality, we're not cancelling people's parties or their ability to mix. What we are saying is, think carefully before you go. Are you likely to meet people who are vulnerable? Get a test. And I think that is very, very good. Make sure that there's ventilation, wear a mask on transport, and get a test before you go.
Now, the former Tory London mayoral candidate, Sean Bailey, has apologised after a photograph emerged earlier in the week of him posing with 23 guests at a Christmas gathering held in his campaign office during strict COVID restrictions last year. Now, in an exclusive interview with Dan Wootton, he was asked what happened at the party.
I want to start with an apology. Whatever happened, it was an error of judgment. So I want to own that. I've had a young team. They've been working very hard for months at a time. And I came back from an event and they were there all set up, sort of ready to go. And I spoke to them and then we took the infamous photo. I wish at that point I had said, hold on a second, we're straying here, but we're going too far. But I didn't. And I want to own that because, yes, I had senior members of the team, but it is my team and I should have owned that. So I want to just take that on board. I think the other thing to say was we were in a workplace bubble. We were working together. It felt quite natural. I had been, earlier that day, I had a really busy day, so I'd just come from a string of 4 interviews. I'd come back, you know, to look at some paperwork to go off to be on Newsnight, so I tootled off on Newsnight. So I wasn't there long, but the point was I was there long enough, and I could have and should have said, hold on, chaps, girls, we're going the wrong way with this. Let's move back. And they had some nibbles, and I spoke to the team. Thank you, boys. Thank you, girls, for all the work you'd done. And then they went on and went long late into the night. But the point is, I could have been part of the process of stopping it, and I wasn't. I could have said to them, actually, nibble at your desk. You know what I mean? Let me make sure you're finished by the time I'm done at Newsnight. I could have said 100 things, but I didn't. Focused on work, whatever. And these things happened, and CCHQ stepped in. They stepped in. They stepped in and said, look, we're going to have to discipline some people. And they went ahead and disciplined people. And it was the right thing to do. I really do understand the anger, because you saw people who didn't see their parents, who couldn't see their children, all kinds of things. I remember so many of our own team are staying in London because they couldn't go home to their parents and all sorts. So that I fully understand where the anger comes from. But that's where the apology comes from. I'm only a person. I'm not perfect. I missed that opportunity to do the right thing. And that's why I wanted to sort of come out and say, look, there's 100 different reasons. I could say I was busy. I could say I was in the room for 10 minutes, but that's not the point. The point is I want to apologise, because this isn't about, you know, like you said, what I'd done. It's about who I am and what we as a country were being asked to do. And I failed in my duty in that, and I have absolutely no problem at all apologising for that. I'm only a man. I'm not perfect. I never purported to be perfect. Yes, I wish this hadn't happened, but it has. But what I want to do is deliver for London. I mean, half the reason the heat has been so high, yes, because people think, well, we were in tier 2. But other is because there's political forces who want to remove me. They know the scrutiny that I've brought to the mayor's crime plan is blazing hot for him. They know that they voted for me. They want me to represent them. Because, as you'll know, my politics is about people who have to work for a living. If you lose a week's wages and it makes a difference to you, I'm your guy. I want to make sure that you can feed your kids. I want to make sure you can live somewhere safe. And this pressure cooker I'm in, this mistake I made, does not change that. I still want to do well for people.
Sean Bailey there, who got caught.
Here to help us make sense of all these headlines is Connor Tomlinson, political commentator with Young Voices UK. We'll revisit that interview in a second, Connor, but let's just start with cutting back on Christmas plans. Simon mentioned this sort of disparity we had almost between the Prime Minister and the Chief Medical Officer. Who are you leaning towards?
I think if it's good enough for the Queen to host a Christmas party, I think I am going to see my family. Thank you very much, and not disassociate from all the friends that I should have seen in the last 18 months, but while they were busy having parties, I was unable to do so. It's pretty frustrating to see the sort of doom-mongering from stage, but it's not particularly surprising. The Chief Medical Officer seems to underestimate how much his diktats at a press conference have an impact on the hospitality industry. Obviously, they make 1/3 of their profits for the Christmas period, and then now you've got major bosses coming out and saying, oh, we could actually lose about 1.3 billion just from not just the restrictions put in place, not just the suspect screens everywhere, limiting the amount of capacity, but also the amount of cancellations. About 40% of all the usual Christmas affairs have been cancelled just because Boris and Chris Whitty have been getting up behind their podiums and talking at press conferences. And now there's going to be a disincentive there for people who aren't double jabbed, soon not triple jabbed in January if they can't use a vaccine passport, or don't want to take a lateral flow test or can't get them delivered because there's a shortage. They won't be going either. So it's a pretty damning indictment.
The difficulty with this is Chris Whitty, he's a scientist. He's giving us the facts as he has been presented with them and presents them to us. Then you have the Prime Minister standing next to him who has a political job to do, and he's trying to balance out that public health and people getting on with life as normal. The fact that people are cancelling their Christmas parties suggests that they're siding with the science.
No, I think it suggests that there's such an air of uncertainty that people don't want to have to take a gamble with something like a deposit being put down and losing a lot of money. I mean, I, for example, have got something booked for Christmas for a few days, but I've only got 3 days to cancel it. And so if it gets to the 18th and they decide to shut all the pubs and that, I'm totally fine. If it gets to the 19th, I lose all my money and my girlfriend won't be very happy that we can't go away for Christmas. So a lot of people are going, well, I can't risk that kind of money. I've saved up all year and I can't go to a Christmas party that I've the pub for. I can't go on a quick, in UK getaway with the uncertainty of, things might be shut overnight if Boris decides to get up on his podium and tell us, rather than circumventing Parliament at a press conference, tell us that it's all locked down again.
Some of the uncertainty is just because we're living in a pandemic with a virus that's mutating, that's infecting lots of people. I mean, anecdotally, lots of us are coming across friends, family, colleagues who are testing positive, and people are trying to think, OK, what do I really want to do? The advice is I'm going to try and prioritise those events rather than do everything, because that might be unwise and you might catch coronavirus.
Yes, but as we've already seen in terms of the lethality out of South Africa, the data hasn't been particularly well presented at the previous press conference. They announced vaccine passports, for example. Lots of people were pointing out that the graphs are a bit out of date. South Africa's had a month on the ground data, and they've seen mass reductions in deaths, and they are a far less vaccinated population than the UK is. So I don't see why a lot of people are panicking to the extent that the government are about Omicron.
As was pointed out yesterday, Connor, this was addressed very specifically by Chris Whitty, who said our population is generally older, we are more vulnerable. That's why there's a difference. He was very clear on why we shouldn't do what you're doing, which is extrapolate the South African information and make that what will happen here, because he said that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah, but if they're more vulnerable, they're also more vaccinated, which obviously the government believes the vaccinations work, particularly because they're pushing the booster. Therefore, if the double jab has got sufficient protection against hospitalization and death, all that's in the booster, it decreases your likelihood of transmissibility. So that's why they keep marketing it as a social responsibility. So if they're worried about transmission, fine, push booster. If they're worried about hospitalization and death, well, 2 jabs have already been enough. So I don't see why my elderly relatives can't see me at Christmas.
Well, we're going to have to move things on a little bit just because we're battling with the quality of your line. But let's just talk very quickly about that interview that we had last night with Sean Bailey. What did you make of it? Is that a man who's truly sorry, repentant?
I wouldn't say someone who gets up, and I've met Sean.
There we go.
It was a dodgy line, to be fair, and we lost it altogether. Our apologies, and that was Connor Tomlinson. We're sorry to him as well.
Right, let's give you an overview of what else is happening today, though. Schools across the UK say they're prepared to switch to online learning if they have to next term, as more children stay home because of COVID. Some children are being asked to take laptops home with them before Christmas in preparation, and more than 30 local authorities told the BBC that some classes had moved online at local schools. The government says it's committed to ensuring that schools in England stay open in January.
The woman who murdered 16-month-old Star Hobson in West Yorkshire has been jailed for life. 28-year-old Savannah Brockhill has been given a minimum term of 25 years. The toddler was assaulted and psychologically abused for months before suffering catastrophic injuries. Her mother, Brockhill's former partner, 20-year-old Frankie Smith, was cleared of murder but sentenced to 8 years for causing or allowing her child's death.
Business groups are increasing pressure on the government to assist firms suffering from the rise in COVID cases. The CBI is urging ministers to provide support in lockstep with future restrictions, while UK Hospitality call for business rates to be deferred and for VAT discounts to be extended. The spread of the Omicron variant has hit consumer confidence and seen hospitality bookings cancelled. The Treasury doesn't plan to extend support beyond current measures.
A judge told the television personality Katie Price she was lucky to avoid prison at her sentencing for a drink driving crash. Price flipped her car on her way to visit a friend on the 28th of September in West Sussex. The judge, who handed Price a 16-week suspended jail term, said her incredibly selfish actions could have easily killed somebody. Sussex police intend to appeal the sentence handed down at Crawley Magistrates Court.
Strictly Come Dancing star AJ Adudu says she's frustrated and upset at being injured ahead of Saturday's final, but vowed she's doing everything she can to make sure she can dance. The TV presenter's due to take to the dance floor in the grand finale of the BBC One show with her professional dance partner, but she's been unable to rehearse since Monday after injuring the ligament in the arch of her right foot. Very frustrating.
You're feeling that pain, aren't you?
A little bit, yes. At least she hasn't got coronavirus.
Now, let's move on to sport. Day one, of course, of the second Ashes test in Adelaide. Australia have reached 45 for 1 at lunch. Stuart Broad took the wicket of opener Marcus Harris for just 3 runs. And in an added bonus for England, the Aussie captain Pat Cummins has to miss the match after being told to self-isolate as a close contact of a COVID case. It's not very sportsmanlike, is it? And in good news for England, someone's having to self-isolate. I suppose we'll take anything at this stage, having lost one.
It's not very sportsmanly behaviour, is it? We've actually got a former England cricketer, Stuart Broad, with us across the morning.
Stuart Broad.
Sorry.
He's playing.
Simon, carry on with the sports news for me.
You like your cricket, don't you? That's good. We've got Ben Stokes popping in.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
40 balls in the next over. Anyway, tell us about football. I'm going to enjoy this one.
Arteta saluted the attitude and commitment of his Arsenal players after they beat West Ham 2-0 to climb into the top 4. The Gunners won comfortably thanks to goals, which grabbed their chance with second half scores.
What? Do you know, I don't think
Sometimes you just want to start the day again. What's happening with the weather, Simon?
Funny you should ask. Today, Rosie, it's going to be the few spots of rain, in fact, will linger in the far north. Elsewhere, it's going to be dry with variable cloud and bright spells. The best of the brightness will be in the east with longer sunny spells. I was about to say very few signs of any brightness in here, but luckily I was cut off because that would have got me into trouble.
Now, as the booster jabs continue to be rolled out, the company responsible for the Moderna vaccine says its initial 2 doses are not enough to effectively fight the Omicron variant. Moderna released data on Wednesday showing a booster shot could increase a person's antibody levels 20-fold to effectively fight the virus. The demand for the booster has shot up in recent days as over 600,000 people received the jab yesterday in order to protect themselves over the festive period.
Well, for more on the demand for the jab and what concerns people have over Christmas, let's go to our Northwest reporter, Bradley Harris. Bradley, good morning to you.
Morning.
Great. Well, there. So just tell us about what the take-up in the Northwest. We've seen queues in much of the country. What's been happening there in the Northwest of England?
Yeah, well, I think in the northwest of England, it's been pretty positive in the reaction to the booster jabs. I was taking a little tour around the northwest this week, seeing how many people are going to the walk-in sites. There are a few that have started to open up across the northwest of England. In Whalley Range Tennis Club on Tuesday, there was a queue of about 10 or 15 people. By 3 o'clock, a security guard had to come by and stop people from coming because they simply didn't have any jabs left. So they had to stop people from joining the queue. Loads of people coming from all parts of Greater Manchester there to try and get that booster jab. Yesterday, I took a trip into the town centre. That's where I am now in St Peter's Square. That's also in Manchester. Couldn't believe what I was seeing yesterday. Huge queues. Hundreds of people queuing up in St Peter's Square. Obviously very quiet this morning. The vaccination site in the town hall doesn't actually open until 3 o'clock this afternoon. It was the same yesterday, and they're open until 7 p.m. in the evening. But people were telling me that actually from about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, an hour before the site actually opens, people were queuing up. So clearly the Prime Minister's message is getting through. People are concerned about the Omicron variant. And whilst I was in the town hall yesterday and having a look around, I chatted to some people in the queue to get their thoughts on why they came out to queue up. Let's just hear some of their thoughts.
I think it's good. It's really good to see the turnout, especially considering they said young people didn't want vaccines to start with. It's good to see it sold out.
Quite a lot of people right now are getting COVID at uni. We know quite a lot of people in our accommodation who are getting COVID, and I don't want to have to be stuck at here and not go home.
My mum is part of the kind of vulnerable cohort, so she's got kind of type 1 diabetes. So it's a little kind of late to be telling us that you kind of need the booster, but obviously now that we've got the walk-ins, I've come today to kind of do that so my family's safe for Christmas, really.
My dad lives in France, so we need to get vaccinated in order to go visit him. It's been about 2 years since I've seen him now, so...
I mean, personally, I'm not too bothered. I've had 2 jabs now. I've not caught Rona since it's been around. I've not been that sensible, but absolutely fine. Obviously, it's no joke and whatnot, but yeah, it's just to get my mum off my chest, to be honest. Get off my back.
The place opened at 3, I believe, to start allowing people to let in, but the queue was already all the way round by the time we arrived, and that was about 2:30. So clearly everyone's eager, and I love that. It's really, really good.
How long have you been waiting, and how long do you think you've got left to go?
We've been waiting about an hour, maybe an hour and a half now. I'd say we're coming up to the last half an hour now, but it's worth it.
Yeah, so that's just some of the thoughts from people in the queue yesterday outside the town hall in Manchester city centre. People wanting to get the jab simply so they can see family and friends this Christmas. But then there were some other people as well who said, I'm simply coming out just because people told me to. One person said, as you heard there, I just wanted to get my mum off my back. So people are coming out simply because they just want to get it done and dusted before the year is up. So interesting to hear their thoughts from some of the people, and I'm told that big queues are expected here again this afternoon.
Yeah, people are being prepared to queue for hours, Bradley. When you just said there, people want to do it for Christmas, how long does the booster take to actually give you protection? Is that going to make much difference to your chances over the next 2 weeks?
Well, if you get a booster today, for instance, it's expected that you should get some protection within a week. That's because the antibodies are actually at a very high level there. So expect some protection after a week, but it actually takes 4 weeks to get full immunisation from the virus. Now, of course, Omicron, we're still learning about it. It's still very infectious, but what they're saying is that 2 vaccines, the first and second dose, isn't going to be enough. Actually, it's that booster that they say is going to give 75% of people less symptoms of coronavirus. So the booster, what scientists are saying, will provide extra protection, but it will take 4 weeks for that full protection.
OK, Bradley, thank you very much. Well done coping with that noise. We'll be back to you later on.
Now, it's 23 minutes past 6. Coming up here on the programme, a charity is releasing a new single just in time for Christmas in support of the detained mother, Nazanin Zahawi Ratcliffe. We're hearing from her husband after this.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. Another grey day for the vast majority, but another dry day for most of us as well. There is some rain across northern parts of Scotland that'll only slowly peter out. That's being caused by this weather front, but it's this chunky area of high pressure that's been moving in for the past 24 hours, and once it's here, it's set to stay. It's going to bring a lot of dry weather through the weekend and beyond. As I said, though, it's not completely dry today. There is some rain across northern Scotland, clearing from the mainland, but likely to linger in Shetland into the afternoon. Some breaks in the cloud, but there's also some fog patches around as well, so just bear that in mind across parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire. That fog could last for most of the day. For most places, though, it's just cloudy and dry, and temperatures maybe a touch down on yesterday's values, but still actually above average for this time of the year. During this evening, we will again see some breaks developing in the cloud that could allow some fog patches to form. So again, parts of northeast England, northeast Scotland, maybe North Wales too. Elsewhere, generally just staying cloudy and dry, maybe a bit of drizzle at times coming into the Western Isles. The rain should finally peter out across Shetland. Temperatures are going to drop down to single figures for sure, maybe even a pocket of frost or two across parts of northern Scotland where we've got the clear skies. But again, there could be some fog around during Friday morning, which may last for most of the day. However, for much of northern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Wales, we should see some sunny spells. Elsewhere, again, for the majority, it's just drab but dry, and temperatures just dropping down another degree or so. So single figures for most as a high on Friday. And speaking of high, this pressure system is sitting with us through Friday, Saturday and beyond, even into the start of Christmas week, which promises a lot of dry weather, but a lot of cloud as well. Increasing chance of seeing some persistent fog patches and also turning a bit colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It's 28 minutes past 6. You're watching The Great British Breakfast with, what's your name? Rosie and Simon. Sorry, I've just had a late night.
Now, inflation is back. All eyes will be on the Bank of England ahead of its decision later today. Economists thought the consumer price index rate would rise from 4.2% to 4.7% in November. Instead, though, it leapt to 5.1%. That's now the highest level in a decade.
So, will the Bank of England raise its interest rate or hold fire? Here to explain is Andrew Sachs, Head of Media and Analysis at ETX Capital. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
It was a no-brainer a couple of months ago. Bank of England was first surefire going to have to raise interest rates, and they were going to do so. Now not, because things have changed, haven't they?
They have, indeed, and you're absolutely right. It certainly is the highest, 5.1% is the highest level of CPI since 2011. So it's a difficult one for the Bank of England. We've got the MPC meeting today, so sometime during today we'll know the outcome of that. But over the last few months, since, as you say, Rosie, since they actually recently they said that they were going to have to raise them, and then if you look at the more recent MPC meetings, they've kept them the same. Really haven't changed the interest rate, and that's because there's a lot of concern about raising interest rates, because it's not so much the business community that would be a problem with that. It would be the domestic consumer that would be really affected. So there are two problems that I think the Bank of England faces here. One is that to try and make sure that the business community is sustainable, they would have to keep the interest rates they can try and keep the interest rates down to keep business borrowing and consumer borrowing and mortgage payments and things like that affordable in these times when there has been a cost of living crisis and a supply chain problem which has affected businesses. On the other hand, if inflation keeps going up the way it has been, and it is really, let's call it rocketing, I mean, that's very high inflation for a Western economy, then you have, if the interest rates are low, there are businesses that are having to swallow the cost of the increasing cost of supply chain and paying staff and buying products from overseas to manufacture in certain places. This is a cost that even energy companies have had to, we've seen how many of them have gone bankrupt because of this. So holding the interest rate down whilst the inflation goes up means that somebody has to swallow the cost. And eventually, all we're doing is deferring a potential problem.
Do you think we're going to see persistent rises in inflation?
I think at the moment, yes, we will, because the last 2 or 3 years, well, that's certainly the last 18 months, there have been a dramatic effect on the economy by government policies, and it hasn't just been in the UK, it's been in many Western countries where there have been draconian lockdowns, and the figures have been played down. Everyone is very calm. There's good behaviour from most companies, a lot of compliance, and as a result, we haven't seen yet the true effect of this on the actual economy.
But inflation is different, isn't it? Because you're paying it. You have to pay increased prices. You mentioned staff, and this is also the problem. Eventually, we're going to talk about wage inflation because people will demand more money.
That's right.
And then you get into this spiral, and this is what they have to worry about.
They certainly do, and that's already starting in some places. In the United States, there's now a debate about the minimum wage, which is becoming quite politically heated. So if that starts to go up, and we've already seen over the last year, a lot of workers in certain positions that rely on customer service or customer facing or in the hospitality trade have actually left the UK and gone back to where they originate from because there was no lockdowns and better job opportunities. So there's less pool of employees. There's a high demand for talent in certain places, and they are demanding high salaries. So if the inflation goes up, already that is companies are stretching themselves to pay the right people. If inflation goes up, we see wage inflation going up. You'll find not only people borrowing from the companies they work for, taking advances, but also having to be paid more. And that's a difficult one for companies to balance. And then you have the retail side of the market, which is the consumer side. Mortgages are a major outgoing for the majority of people. And that is a very important measure because mortgage payments have been calculated over the last few years based on very low interest rates. And the economy relies, the property market and the domestic outgoings relies on having very low repayments to be able to afford those. If we see a return to high inflation and it gets passed on to consumer, there are quite a few people who remember what happened in 1991 when the interest rate went up to 15%. And even construction companies walked away from building sites halfway through. And then there was a lot of repossessions too. So I think they're trying to hold that off at the moment.
Yeah.
We're talking about, trying to aid economic recovery, which right now with the new variant looks like it's going to be even more challenging. Hospitality, pubs, they are seriously hurting.
Yes, they are. Yes, they certainly are.
Well, and the CBI wants the government to do something about it.
Yes, they do. And I think they've been very, very conservative in their request. The CBI is well-intentioned, that's for sure. And what they've done is they've asked the government to try to give them a VAT reduction or some kind of tax breaks and some incentives to try and help them weather the storm.
Well, business rates is the usual one, isn't it?
Business rates, absolutely. Yeah. And they want to, I think the last I heard this morning was that the CBI wanted them to cancel business rates for a certain amount of time whilst this period goes on. But the thing that should really be of concern is that all of these cancellations and all of this effect on that particular sector, and let's be fair, there has been a lot of talk of the hospitality sector over the last few months, but it is a very large business sector in the UK where there's a lot of tertiary services. So it isn't one that should be ignored, certainly, and it is one that's being affected heavily now. Now, I think really all of these cancellations are quite voluntary. It's really a shame that a whole business sector has to suffer from that. I think it's really a better policy for them to carry on their business and just business as usual. Well,
they would love to, wouldn't they? But I mean, you see Tom Kerridge literally in front of a screen as 600 people are cancelling these various restaurants. Christmas parties are being cancelled now left, right and centre, and more will follow. I mean, difficult to predict because, as you say, that's a personal decision. But companies are suddenly realising we can't risk this.
That's right. It is a personal decision. And I think that some responsibility has to be at the door of the government. But, of course, what will happen is if they keep voluntarily, if the government keeps advising people not to go out, advising people not to go to social activity, and it's not really law, it's just advice, and companies keep having to close their doors by default because everyone keeps cancelling their reservation, they will eventually go out of business. It's no good saying don't pay any tax or don't pay any VAT if you've got no customers whatsoever. What they should really be doing is assisting these. The way we stay healthy as a society is to stay in business and to keep our livelihoods.
Well, which is what furlough showed, wasn't it? So Anyway, it's always good to see you, Andrew.
Likewise.
Nice to see you. Thank you very much, Andrew Sack.
Thank you.
Lots to come here on the programme. The Shadow Secretary of Health, Wes Streeting, is going to join us to discuss COVID cases, Christmas plans after this.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching The Great British Breakfast. It is coming up to 20 minutes to 7.
Now, rock band The Christians are releasing a Christmas single called Naz Don't Cry. It's aimed at supporting Nazanin Zahawi Ratcliffe. Nazanin has been detained in Iran for over 2,000 days on charges of spying and attempting to topple the Iranian government, charges that she has continually denied. Well, the group is trying to raise money for Redress, an international human rights organisation working to help the victims of torture.
Well, joining us now is the husband of Nazanin Zahawi Ratcliffe, Richard Ratcliffe, to talk about this. Richard, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
This sounds unlikely, is one word that would spring to mind. How did it come about?
No, that's right. It was one of those things that came out of the hunger strike. So, I was camping in front of the Foreign Office for 3 weeks back in November. Someone came up from the Connected Band and said, listen, the manager of the band is very keen to do something to help. I've been moved by your story, your family's story. We did this song 30 years ago, which was focused on a hostage in Lebanon. A hostage in Lebanon called it was nice for Nazanin to be able to sort of call the band and say hello to them and just thank them that it's just
help you to keep this conversation as a conversation that the public are talking about. Last time we spoke, Richard, it was outside number 10, talking about a game of snakes and ladders of what happened to Nazanin's case and many others. Do you personally just feel exhausted at the number and constant attempts you've got to do to keep everyone talking about Nazanin, to try and engineer some kind of action?
I mean, certainly cases like ours are attritional, and you know, as a family, as a campaign, you need to find ways to keep knocking on the government's door and to keep saying, listen, come on, you need to solve this. Actually, something like this, and it was true also when I was on hunger strike, lots of lovely people coming up with all sorts of caring, supporting messages and ideas of help, but we would never have thought of doing a pop song, and certainly would never have been creative enough to create as beautiful a one as the one that they'd produced. So that kind of strangers reaching out and offering a hand of care. It's just a lovely reminder that, you know, fundamentally the world's a kind place and it's full of kind people. And actually, I mean, you know, this bit's not been exhausting. This bit's been lovely.
Do you know, I mean, of all people, for you to say that this is a kind world and a kind place, I could utterly forgive you for thinking completely the opposite. The world has not been kind to you, certainly not kind to your wife. I'm not sure how kind this government's been to your wife. I mean, what on earth are they doing?
No, it's a good question. Certainly, we've got a meeting actually today with the Foreign Office to ask exactly that. I mean, as you said, we've been going for many years and there's a real cruelty to our situation. We've been exposed to all sorts of kindness from strangers, but we are caught in a fight between two governments who have acted fairly coldly and continue to do so. In terms of what the government's doing, you know, there's big picture stuff going on with Iran. There's negotiations over the nuclear deal, and we're clearly a chess piece in relation to that from the Iranian side, as well as to the specifics of a pot of money that they want back. And I mean, I don't know what the government is doing. I think, you know, we had a fairly good sense back in the summer that they were working very hard. Clearly, things cooled rapidly with the change of government in Iran. And we're in a position where it's quite hard to get in front of Liz Truss, the new Foreign Secretary at the moment. I pushed pretty hard before Christmas. So we'll see, does that mean that you know, they're working on something behind closed doors and want to bring us together when it's a happier time, or in fact whether actually nothing is moving for a long time, and so it's best that we don't realise it too quickly.
Richard, forgive me, am I being naive? But there is a £400 million outstanding bill that the UK owes Iran, which it was thought not long ago, if someone had just written the cheque and it's money that's owed, she would have been freed. Is it as simple as that?
Yes, is the short answer. It always has been as simple as that. That's why Nazanin was taken almost 6 years ago. Her interrogators made that very clear. There were some negotiations that broke down in March 2016, and we got picked up in April. And yeah, you know, obviously the government has its reasons for not wanting to pay that because it's a 40-year-old debt. And behind closed doors, we have asked a number of times, well, what's the problem? And we'll just, you know, we don't have to link it, just clear it out of the way, and then that'll be good for us and all the others who are being held. The government's very reluctant to explain what's going on, both in public and in Parliament, and also to us behind closed doors. But yes, I do think it always has been that simple.
What kind of idea do you have on timelines? Are you hopeful for a significant change anytime soon?
That's a really good question, Rosie. Look, I think it feels like we are further back now than we were a year ago. So last Christmas, we were counting down until the end of Nazanin's sentence. There was a clear date of March the 7th, which is when this should have all been over. But a year on, you know, it's a lot less certain where things are politically. We've got a whole new, well, we've been convicted again, just haven't been put in prison yet. There's a second family, they've also had a second case against them opened. It feels very clear, like a game of cat and mouse, where there's an uncertainty. It might be over soon. Probably, you know, if I was a gambling man, I think it's more likely that bumps are coming and that, you know, we could have a while to run still.
In the meantime, Gabriella, it's Christmas. You've got priorities, looking after her family. All we can say is have as good a Christmas as you can, and you know, we will keep you talking on this programme for as long as this takes. Because Richard, I think everybody has nothing but sympathy for you and your position. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you all.
Thank you.
Still to come here on the programme, England have made a good start to their second test in the Ashes. But Australia are still waiting for their big hitters to bat. We'll have the latest for you after this.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. Another grey day for the vast majority, but another dry day for most of us as well. There is some rain across northern parts of Scotland that'll only slowly peter out. That's being caused by this weather front, but it's this chunky area of high pressure that's been moving in for the past 24 hours, and once it's here, it's set to stay. It's going to bring a lot of dry weather through the weekend and beyond. As I said, though, it's not completely dry today. There is some rain across northern Scotland, clearing from the mainland, but likely to linger in Shetland into the afternoon. Some breaks in the cloud, but there's also some fog patches around as well, so just bear that in mind across parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire. That fog could last for most of the day. For most places, though, it's just cloudy and dry, and temperatures maybe a touch down on yesterday's values, but still actually above average for this time of the year. During this evening, we will again see some breaks developing in the cloud that could allow some fog patches to form. So again, parts of northeast England, northeast Scotland, maybe North Wales too. Elsewhere, generally just staying cloudy and dry, maybe a bit of drizzle at times coming into the Western Isles. The rain should finally peter out across Shetland. Temperatures are going to drop down to single figures for sure, maybe even a pocket of frost or two across parts of northern Scotland where we've got the clear skies. But again, there could be some fog around during Friday morning, which may last for most of the day. However, for much of northern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Wales, we should see some sunny spells. Elsewhere, again, for the majority, it's just drab but dry, and temperatures just dropping down another degree or so. So single figures for most as a high on Friday. And speaking of high, this pressure system is sitting with us through Friday, Saturday and beyond, even into the start of Christmas week, which promises a lot of dry weather, but a lot of cloud as well. Increasing chance of seeing some persistent fog patches and also turning a bit colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Sing along with your favourite stars when you try the Roxy TV Music app free today. Available on any TV. Stream music videos, music games and karaoke. Try Roxy free today and claim a free karaoke mic. Go to roxy.tv or on Sky Q, select Roxy on the app's rail now.
Lebara SIM-only plans offer 10 gigs of data and unlimited UK minutes and text for just £10 a month. Right now, get 50% off for the first 3 months. Buy now at lebara.co.uk.
We've Christmas gifts for him, for her, for the little ones and the big ones. We've lights, decorations, wreaths and crackers. Ho, 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 how festive. Stores in Aberdare, St Mellons, Cardiff, Caerphilly, Rogerstone and Cwmbran. Or visit what-shop.co.uk to find out more.
When was the last time that you've stopped to think if the makeup shades you're wearing truly suit the woman you are today? Is it time to rethink your routine? Choosing the perfect makeup is not just about your skin tone, but it's a combination of your skin, hair, and eye colour. That's what makes you uniquely you. That's why I created our Match to Me technology at Trini London. It's foolproof. 15 seconds later, Match to Me has found the colours that suit you the best. Find your match at trinilondon.com.
Try the Roxy TV Music app free today and claim a free karaoke mic while stocks last. Go to roxy.tv.
It's 10 minutes to 7. Welcome back to the Great British Breakfast.
Let's talk cricket. Shall we talk cricket?
Let's do it.
Veteran bowlers Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad, they've returned to the England team for the second Ashes test in Adelaide, which started a short time ago. They both bowled brilliantly, it says here, in the first hour. Broad claiming the wicket of Aussie opener Marcus Harris for just 3 runs, thanks to an incredible catch from wicketkeeper Jos Buttler. But David Warner and Marnus Labuschagne helped the home side reach 45 for 1 in what was a tight first session. Well, the second session is now underway. Former England bowler Stuart Meaker has been watching the action for us this morning, and great pleasure to say he's actually here with us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Simon.
So you've been watching. How are we doing?
Look, it's very evenly keeled, I think, going into the dinner break. I think you could obviously
after lunch.
Well, after lunch, no lunchtime session. So I think England have actually bowled extremely well. There's been a lot of nip and sort of movement off of the pitch, but sadly the score doesn't probably represent how well they've bowled. They've only got the 1 wicket to show for it. Had 3 reviews already this morning. One of them was given out, but then overturned on review. And they just haven't quite gotten the rewards for how well they've bowled this morning. It's been brilliant.
What does that do? Does that upset the psyche when you get a call against you like that?
I think when you've gone into a test and you're 1-0 down, you want to have as good a start as you could possibly have. I think already Australia sort of ahead of the game because they've won the toss and they're batting on a very good wicket out in Australia. But I don't think they'd be too disheartened. I think they've gone. England have started off brilliantly and they've been on the front foot.
We don't normally say this, but coronavirus has actually provided a help to the England team for once.
We will take any advantage we can out in Australia, even if COVID has come to our save and our aid.
The captain who's self-isolated.
Well, yeah, I mean, rather unfortunate. One of 20 people who've probably got COVID in South Australia because they've shut their borders the whole time. Pat Cummins, the captain, happened to be sitting just next to him in a table in a restaurant. But yeah, sadly he misses out. But that brings Steve Smith back into captaincy, which we've not seen since 2018, so 3 years ago now. So.
Well, now, look, I'm going to let you go, because you need to go and watch the match. We're going to move on, but you're going to come back.
Yes.
Within the hour to keep us updated on this. But for now, Stuart, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Now, the UK has recorded its highest number of daily COVID cases since the beginning of the pandemic. That's over 78,000 cases in one day yesterday. That's over 10,000 cases above the previous record. And England's Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, warned more records could be broken in the coming weeks as we head into the festivities.
Well, Wes Streeting is Shadow Secretary of State for Health and Social Care and joins us now. Wes, good morning to you.
Good morning.
On the face of it, these figures, Professor Whitty yesterday, it was quite frightening.
Yes, we know that this variant, the Omicron variant, is spreading fast. In fact, it's spreading faster than any other variant. And the risk here is that whether or not the disease is more severe than other variants, that remains to be seen. Because it's spreading so fast and because it will affect significant numbers of people, even if a smaller proportion of people who get Omicron end up in hospital, it will still be a smaller proportion of a far greater number. And there's a real challenge facing the NHS, both in terms of patients coming through the door and the pressure that places on services, but also on staff who may themselves find themselves off sick and absent, and what that does in terms of care. And that's the single biggest concern we've got, and that's what's driving decision-making around the Omicron cases at the moment, and why Parliament voted for a few important restrictions this week.
Do you think those restrictions are sufficient?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. We're listening to the Chief Medical Officer, we're listening to the Chief Scientific Advisor and our own advisors too, and watching the numbers very closely. What I would say to the government and to the country is, as we've shown this week, Labour will put public health before party politics. If further measures are necessary, we stand ready to help so that Boris Johnson can focus on public health and not his own personal political problems.
Hang on, Wes, because Labour backed what Boris Johnson was putting to Parliament the other night. It was his own MPs, 199 of them, that didn't. That's a bit tricky for you, because basically what you're saying is, well, that Boris Johnson is right.
Well, we listen to the Chief Medical Officer, the Chief Scientific Advisor, and to the NHS, and we don't trust Boris Johnson, but we do trust them, and so it seems does the public, because despite what they've seen in recent weeks and the shattered trust and confidence in Boris Johnson, the sense of double standards, the do as I say, not as I do approach of his government, people are listening to what the medical advisors are saying at these press conferences. They're voting with their feet, they're thinking about their own Christmas plans and taking sensible precautions to enjoy Christmas safely this year, which is what we want to see.
But who are you siding with? Because it seems to be actually that Chris Whitty wants there to be further restrictions than we voted for with Plan B measures.
well, we side with the public interest and public health first and foremost. That will drive our decision making around votes. And as I say, we do speak regularly with the government's medical and scientific advisors and with the NHS, and we stand ready to do whatever's necessary. We want people to enjoy Christmas. We want people to enjoy Christmas safely. There are a whole range of sensible things we can all do to make that happen, including, taking a test before we go out to see people, whether that's friends or family, whether visiting people in their homes, or going out to a pub or bar or restaurant. So there are sensible things that we can all do. We're keeping a close eye on these numbers. We want to make sure we're doing the right thing. We want to make sure we're striking the right balance. And most importantly, we want to make sure that those pressures on the NHS are manageable so that the NHS is there to help us when we need them.
Wes, here you are, newly appointed Shadow Health Secretary, and you find yourself giving what many people have praised, a speech in the House of Commons where basically you're describing government ministers saying they're not Nazis, defending them to their own backbenchers, an unusual defence, one I suspect even you thought you wouldn't be making just a few days ago.
No, and I think it's a sign of how far the Conservative Party's fallen into disarray. I mean, I will have my criticisms of Sajid Javid, the Health Secretary. I've got plenty of criticisms to make of this government and its handling of the NHS over many years. But I can't bear seeing Conservative MPs describing their own government and own government ministers as kind of 1930s Nazis. I mean, this is just kind of crazy stuff. I never thought I'd be in a position of having to point out that they've got a difficult job to do. We've all got a responsibility to the public and to public health, and we've got to try and help the government to do the right thing in a national crisis. I think that's what people want to see. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be sticking the boot into the government on things like NHS waiting times, waiting lists, staff shortages, all of which were big problems before the pandemic, and led me to also say the other day that it's not just that they didn't fix the roof while the sun was shining. It seems like they dismantled the roof and removed the floorboards, and as a result, it's been a lot harder to manage this pandemic. So I will make robust criticisms of the government, but I will do so in a way that's rooted in evidence, and also, treats my colleagues in other political parties as human beings, decent human beings, trying to do the right thing. We'll have disagreements about whether they're doing the right thing, but we'll conduct debate in what I hope will be a more respectful and civilised way than we've seen from Conservative MPs.
According to Chris Whitty, doing the right thing over the next 10 days or so in advance of Christmas is cutting back on plans over Christmas. Have you personally cancelled anything, changed your plans?
Agonising with this, actually. I think we all are. There are, some things this weekend I might have done that might not do. It's a difficult one because, I listened this morning just, to the news bulletins and listening to some of those hospitality businesses describing the cancellation of bookings, the impact on their businesses, and it's a really difficult judgment to make. I will be making sure that before I do go and see people, I'll be taking a test, making sure that we've got the ventilation, opening windows, really sensible things that we can do. But ultimately, we're being asked to make kind of responsible choices, and I'm thinking about that myself in terms of my plans. There are family members this year that I won't be able to see because they're older and more vulnerable, which is sad. So we've all got to try and do the right thing. And of course, that's the balance we've tried to strike in Parliament with the rules this week. We don't want to be the Grinch that stole Christmas. We don't want to stop people from socialising. Social interaction's really important at this time of year, whether with friends or with family, and we're trying to protect that. And I hope that people will have a Merry Christmas and do so safely.
Are you a party animal?
I think my sort of partying days are behind me, Simon.
Get off.
I do like seeing people. I do like going out for a drink with friends, and so I'll just be trying to make sure I do that in a responsible way, and in a way that's consistent with the rules.
Well, it's good to see you, and if we don't speak to you before Christmas, have a great Christmas.
And to you, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thanks for your time.
Welcome back and a very good morning. Thursday the 16th of December. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on The Great British Breakfast with Simon McCoy and Rosie Wright.
A very wary Christmas. The public is being urged to scale back plans in the run-up to Christmas following the rapid spread of the Omicron variant. As COVID cases hit their highest level ever, So what do you plan to do this Christmas? Are you changing your plans? Let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Tory rebels turn up the heat on the Prime Minister, warning things must change by next year or they'll have to go, after delivering the biggest blow to his premiership, with nearly 100 of his own MPs turning against him.
A mother who allowed her 16-month-old daughter to be murdered by her lover will be freed in just 4 years, while the toddler's killer, who laughed in the dock as she was sentenced, will serve a minimum of 25 years. Has justice been served?
Business groups are calling on the government to help companies suffering in the wake of booking cancellations spurred on by the Omicron variant. So what else should the government do to try to help business?
And it's day one of the second Ashes test in Adelaide. No Captain Cummins for the Aussies after he was forced to self-isolate. But it's honours even so far out in the middle. We'll have the latest throughout the morning with former England player Stuart Meaker.
Well, welcome back to the programme. I thought it was so interesting there that Wes Streeting said that he was agonising over what to do with his weekend plans.
I think everybody is. Even the Queen has said she's now going to make a last-minute decision on whether they have their annual party. I'm sure you're having the same problems, discussions in your house, in your offices. A lot of offices are having to rethink things as well. So do let us know, are you also agonising? And if so, how's it going?
And the reality is the UK recorded its highest number of daily COVID cases since the beginning of the pandemic. Over 78,000 newer cases were reported yesterday. And to give you some idea, that's 10,000 cases above the previous record in January. England's Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, warned more records could be broken in coming weeks as we head into the festive season.
Well, speaking alongside him, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, urged everyone to keep calm this Christmas, but carry on testing.
We're not cancelling events, we're not closing hospitality, we're not cancelling people's parties or their ability to mix. What we are saying is, think carefully before you go. Are you likely to meet people who are vulnerable? Get a test. And I think that is very, very good. Make sure that there's ventilation, wear a mask on transport, and get a test before you go.
Professor Ajim Mazid is a professor of primary care and public health at Imperial College and joins us now. Professor, 78,000 cases. Chris Whitty saying it's going to climb. Do you think the restrictions put in place are appropriate to the scale of the outbreak?
I think for now they probably are appropriate. We need to push our vaccination programme, wear face masks on places like public transport and in shops. But I think also, as Chris Whitty said yesterday, people need to think about their social interactions in the next week or two and perhaps prioritise those which are focused on their family and less on those which are with wider groups outside their households and families in indoor settings where there's much higher risk of infection.
Professor, reading between the lines and watching him yesterday, and this is lockdown by stealth, isn't it? It is contact only with those close to you.
It's a self-imposed lockdown in effect for many people. So in my own case, my department cancelled its Christmas party. We're avoiding large interactions indoors with each other. So many of my friends, professional colleagues in the NHS are all avoiding large gatherings indoors with other people and are focusing on trying to meet their families this Christmas.
Yeah, it looks as though this is just so much more infectious than previous strains. And when we first heard about Delta, we were saying this is so much more infectious. How do you think this is going to develop over the next few weeks, as we all do? OK, maybe try to limit some of our interactions, but gear towards what is going to be busy in 10 days' time from now.
Yes, unfortunately, Delta was very infectious, but this variant has turned to be more infectious yet again. And Delta will probably replace Delta in the next few weeks across the UK. I think the fact is we are going to see a high level of cases across the UK, initially in London, but then that will spread across to other parts of the UK. Vaccines do work well against serious illness, so although we'll see high case numbers, I'm hopeful the vaccines will keep down serious cases to a level where we can cope with that, even though we might get an increase in deaths and hospital admissions. Those increases hopefully won't be to the level we saw last winter when we had to go to lockdown. So I think vaccines are the key. Particularly boosters, because 2 doses don't work very well against this variant. You need 3 doses to get any kind of a good effect against this Omicron variant. And that combined with reduced interactions, over the next few weeks, particularly indoors, I would hope will keep serious cases down to a level we can actually carry on and avoid a lockdown.
This is the frustration everybody's feeling, is that most people have already done what the government would say is the right thing. They've had their double vaccines and they've had the booster. They feel we've done everything we possibly can, and yet we're still facing this exponential rise in the number of cases. We're being told to be careful. The scientists, you just look at their faces, clearly they're very concerned. But are we all falling into this sense of a nationwide panic? Because the result of that is, and we're seeing it already, financially, businesses are going to be destroyed by that.
I think government needs to support those businesses, because often it'll be very hard for them as their peak season, as part of its public health programme. I think people shouldn't panic. Vaccines are working well against serious illness, and we can therefore suppress the effects of Omicron, even if we have very large case numbers in coming weeks. It's possible that next year we may need a new vaccine next year modified for Omicron. Pfizer and other companies said they can do that by the spring. So it may well be that we require another vaccine in the future. But for now, I think people should get vaccinated and behave sensibly to try to limit the effects of Omicron.
If someone's got the booster jab, lots of people are trying to get it now, thinking that's going to help them not get coronavirus over Christmas. Is that right?
So the jab will take about 7 to 40 days to kick in properly. So if you got a jab today, it wouldn't probably kick in for about, at least a week, and probably 2 weeks. So yeah, the fact is that it won't kick in probably before Christmas. And also the jab is, the booster is not a panacea. You can still get infected and infect others. Although it will suppress serious symptoms, you can still be infected, even being triple jabbed.
Well, it's good of you to join us, Professor Azim Majid, Professor of Primary Care and Public Health at Imperial College. Thank you.
Well, as the booster rollout continues, the company responsible for the Moderna vaccine says its initial 2 doses are not enough to effectively fight the Omicron variant. Moderna released this data on Wednesday, showing a booster shot could increase a person's antibody levels 20-fold to effectively fight the virus. The demand for the booster jab has shot up in recent days, as over 600,000 people received the jab yesterday to try to protect themselves, although, as we just heard from the professor, maybe not that successfully, over the festive period.
Well, for more on the demand for the jab and what concerns people have over Christmas, let's go to our Northwest reporter Bradley Harris and just talk about take-up. What's it like where you are there in the northwest of England?
Yeah, well, here in the northwest, Simon, one thing is certain. There has certainly been a transformation and a change of scenery in certain parts in the northwest. What I mean by that is here in St. Peter's Square, Manchester city centre, just yesterday from 2 o'clock, there were huge queues, and I'm talking hundreds of people queuing up full circle round into the town hall, which has a walk-in vaccination site that opens from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 7 p.m. That's the same today. People coming in mainly for their booster jabs. Some people are coming in for their first or second doses. Up in Chester, we've got Chester Cathedral that has been transformed into a walk-in centre with army personnel helping to distribute jabs there. Over in Whalley Range Tennis Club, that's in Greater Manchester, we saw big queues there with security cutting off people coming and joining the queue because they were running out of jabs. So clearly the Prime Minister's message is cutting through to people. People are concerned about their Christmas plans, as we've been talking about here on the Great British Breakfast. But yesterday I went to chat to people in the queue to find out why they've come to join the queue, why they're getting the jab. Let's just hear some of their thoughts.
I think it's good. It's really good to see the turnout, especially considering they said young people didn't want vaccines to start with. It's good to see it sold out.
Quite a lot of people right now are getting COVID at uni. We know quite a lot of people in our accommodation who are getting COVID, and I don't want to have to be stuck at here and not go home.
My mum is part of the kind of vulnerable cohort, so she's got type 1 diabetes. So it's a little late to be telling us that you need the booster, but obviously now that we've got the walk-ins, I've come today to do that so my family's safe for Christmas, really.
My dad lives in France, so we need to get vaccinated in order to go visit him. It's been about 2 years since I've seen him now, so...
Personally, I'm not too bothered. I've had 2 jabs now. I've not caught Rona since it's been around. I've not been that sensible, but absolutely fine. Obviously it's no joke and whatnot, but it's just to get my mum off my chest, to be honest. Get off my back.
The place opened at 3, I believe, to start allowing people to let in, but
the queue was already all the way round by the time we arrived, and that was about 2:30. So clearly everyone's eager, and I love that. It's really, really good.
How long have you been waiting, and how long do you think you've got left to go?
We've been waiting about an hour, maybe an hour and a half now. I'd say we're coming up to the last like half an hour now, but it's worth it.
Clearly then a big reaction to the booster jab in certain parts in the northwest of England. Not everywhere has a walk-in site like the one here in St Peter's Square, but clearly things like the working from home order, the NHS COVID pass, the announcement from the Prime Minister last night and this booster campaign is clearly, as I say, cutting through with people here in the northwest.
And how long does it take for the booster to give protection? Because everybody's queuing up, but there is a time lag, isn't there?
Yeah, so there is a pretty long wait in the queue. You then have the jab, which takes a few seconds, but then obviously some people might be watching and thinking, well, how long until I get full protection? The booster jab protection actually kicks in after a week. That's because your antibody levels are already pretty high by that point. But actually, it's after 4 weeks do you then get that extra protection. Now, it's only with the booster, providing you've had the first 2 doses of the vaccine. The scientists say that actually this allows 75% of people to have less COVID symptoms. That's what they're saying. That's providing you have the booster jab with the 2 vaccines. Of course, we know that the Omicron variant, we're still learning more about this, but they say that it is more infectious. It is spreading very quickly, and that is going to have an impact on people's plans this Christmas. So, as people are doing here, they are queuing up to get the jab to try and see their family this Christmas.
Bradley, thank you very much. And well, Bradley will keep us up to date across the morning of what's happening with the booster jab and the effort to roll out, and particularly as well, actually, the government asking desperately for more volunteers to try to help administer all of those jabs. Right now, it's 13 minutes past 7, though. Let's give you an overview of what else is happening today. And schools across the UK say they are prepared to switch to online learning if they have to next term, as more children stay at home because of coronavirus. Some children are being asked to take laptops home with them before Christmas in preparation. More than 30 local authorities told the BBC that some classes had moved online at local schools. The government says it's committed to ensuring that schools in England stay open in January.
The woman who murdered 16-month-old Star Hobson in West Yorkshire has been jailed for life. 28-year-old Savannah Brockhill has been given a minimum term of 25 years. The toddler was assaulted and psychologically abused for months before suffering catastrophic injuries. Her mother and Brockhill's former partner, 20-year-old Frankie Smith, was cleared of murder but sentenced to 8 years for causing or allowing her child's death.
Business groups are increasing pressure on the government to assist firms suffering from the rise in COVID cases. The CBI is urging ministers to provide support in lockstep with future restrictions, while UK hospitality called for business rates to be deferred and VAT discounts extended. The spread of the Omicron variant has hit consumer confidence and seen hospitality bookings cancelled. The Treasury does not plan to extend support beyond current measures.
A judge has told the television personality Katie Price she was lucky to avoid prison at her sentencing for a drink-driving crash. Price flipped her car on her way to visit a friend on the 28th of September in West Sussex. The judge, who handed Price a 16-week suspended jail term, said her incredibly selfish actions could have easily killed somebody. Sussex police intend to appeal the sentence handed down at Crawley Magistrates Court.
Strictly Come Dancing star AJ Adudu says she's frustrated and upset at being injured ahead of Saturday's final, but vowed she's doing everything to make sure she can dance. The TV presenter's due to take the dance floor in the grand final on BBC One to show off her dance skills. But she's been unable to rehearse since Monday after injuring the ligament in the arch of her right foot.
Now it's day 1 of the second Ashes test in Adelaide, and a few moments ago Australia were 60 for 1. Stuart Broad took the wicket of opener Marcus Harris for just 3 runs. And in an added bonus for England, the Aussie captain Pat Cummins was missing the match after being told to self-isolate as a close contact of a COVID case.
And also, Arteta saluted the attitude and commitment of his Arsenal players after they beat West Ham 2-0 to climb into the top 4. The Gunners won comfortably thanks to goals in the second half of the game.
Let's have a look at the weather. Today, a few spots of rain will linger in the far north. Elsewhere, it's going to be dry with variable cloud and bright spells. The best of the brightness will be in the east with longer sunny spells.
It's 7:15 now. Letters of no confidence in the Prime Minister will be accepted by email over Christmas as the rebellion of Tory MPs grows. Chairman of the 1922 Committee, which is the parliamentary group of Tory MPs, Sir Graham Brady, will allow members to register their dissatisfaction with Boris Johnson's leadership before Parliament is due to return on the 5th of January.
The rebellion against the Prime Minister has gathered strength after the entire leadership of the 1922 Committee joined the already 100-strong backbench revolt against the government's COVID passport scheme.
Sean Worth is a former Downing Street advisor and current political commentator. Thank you very much for joining us. What is your impression of how much pressure, or how much trouble, I should say, that Boris Johnson is actually in?
Well, let's see what the results of the by-election are like. You know, there's a big test coming up for him on that. But the big issue at the moment is that his authority has just taken such a big bash with all the problems over the Christmas party that did or didn't happen, and recent sort of efforts by Number 10 to manage the political agenda, which have slightly gone awry, and he's sort of bumbled from crisis to crisis, it seems, towards the end of the year. Next year, I think things are going to get even more difficult politically for him, especially if we go into lockdown. We continue to see inflation rising, putting pressure on cost of living, and people, businesses are shut down again, and there's more and more demands on Treasury for political support. So I think he's in the worst situation he's been in so far.
Why do the Tories do this, Sean? Here we are in the middle of a pandemic, a national crisis, a moment where whoever the leader is, we need that leader to work for us, and everybody's presumably doing their best. And yet the Tories seem to want to create this problem within their own party, and we've seen this before.
Yeah, the Conservative Party has a long history of backbenchers creating problems for the leader and getting rid of leaders. And it's just one of those. I think it's a good thing, to be honest, because it keeps the leader, not just the leader, but the group around them, the top ministers, the teams. It keeps them on their toes. And it's this, what you're seeing at the moment, I don't think is a full-on threat to the Prime Minister's sort of existence in terms of being leader of the party and therefore being kicked out anytime soon. But it's certainly upping the pressure, and he needs to get his game together. There's one of the terms used in the media has been that he's lost the dressing room, which is a football analogy, of course, where the manager loses the authority really for the players. And he's definitely in that position at the moment. He needs to get a grip on the political agenda, really, and the way that Number 10 handles news in particular, and the pressure from the media and the public on various issues. And it kind of looks like nobody's really in charge, and that is an issue for him, and he needs to get a grip on that. And there's rumours that they might be bringing some people in and getting some people out and all of that. So it's yes, you're right. It's something that the Conservative Party does. They're an unkind group sometimes, but it does keep the leadership on its toes.
So how does Boris Johnson regain his authority?
I think to be honest, I think it's just a really strong grip on events. I think the Omicron crisis, funnily, is a issue that the government doesn't look too badly on. So I think implicit in your previous question is that, look, there's a huge crisis going on. Why are we worried about toppling the leader and all that kind of stuff? But when he's in that position where he has to do these daily press conferences, it's not just him. It's it's professors and serious health people that seem to know what they're doing. There are graphs with these charts, and they've got things that they can do, and they've got plans. Then he doesn't seem to be in that bad trouble. His ratings tend to go up. It's in the absence of that, and you see the Prime Minister having to actually manage the country and everyday issues like education, healthcare, the policing, and all of that. The shine slightly starts to come off him, and I think he's got a bit of time just to get the team together, get some real grip on those sort of everyday issues, and then allow the scientific advisors to take the lead on the Omicron crisis. The big challenge for him will be what happens after Christmas, really, because I think that's where we're really seeing the pressure building up.
Sean, it's good to see you. Sean Worth there, former Downing Street advisor. Thank you very much.
It's 21 minutes past 7 now. Coming up here on the programme, baby star's mother and her murderer have been sentenced for her death. We'll bring you more after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. Another grey day for the vast majority, but another dry day for most of us as well. There is some rain across northern parts of Scotland that'll only slowly peter out. That's being caused by this weather front, but it's this chunky area of high pressure that's been moving in for the past 24 hours, and once it's here, it's set to stay. It's going to bring a lot of dry weather through the weekend and beyond. As I said, though, it's not completely dry today. There is some rain across northern Scotland, clearing from the mainland, but likely to linger in Shetland into the afternoon. Some breaks in the cloud, but there's also some fog patches around as well, so just bear that in mind across parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire. That fog could last for most of the day. For most places, though, it's just cloudy and dry, and temperatures maybe a touch down on yesterday's values, but still actually above average for this time of the year. During this evening, we will again see some breaks developing in the cloud that could allow some fog patches to form. So again, parts of northeast England, northeast Scotland, maybe North Wales too. Elsewhere, generally just staying cloudy and dry, maybe a bit of drizzle at times coming into the Western Isles. The rain should finally peter out across Shetland. Temperatures are going to drop down to single figures for sure, maybe even a pocket of frost or two across parts of northern Scotland where we've got the clear skies. But again, there could be some fog around during Friday morning, which may last for most of the day. However, for much of northern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Wales, we should see some sunny spells. Elsewhere, again, for the majority, it's just drab but dry, and temperatures just dropping down another degree or so. So single figures for most as a high on Friday. And speaking of high, this pressure system is sitting with us through Friday, Saturday and beyond, even into the start of Christmas week, which promises a lot of dry weather, but a lot of cloud as well. Increasing chance of seeing some persistent fog patches and also turning a bit colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Come on, let's make this woman shine all day. Let's make this world do everything you say. It's so easy and so fun this way.
Create your perfect diamond engagement ring and experience Love Lumber's bespoke same-day diamond engagement rings at Lumber's Jewelers.
Mom, hurry! Our show's gonna start soon!
Won't be too long. I'm leaving work now. People around Christmas. Oh no. Seriously?
Oh, don't worry. Mommy will be back soon. Besides, we can record the show for her.
It's not the same if she's not here.
What the? Oh my goodness. Don't worry, I'm a nurse.
We're on in 30 seconds.
I don't suppose you can sing, can you?
Mommy? That's Mommy!
Whoa.
Introducing Roxy's new free TV music app. Unlimited music videos with 70 million music releases. Search the latest and the greatest from every genre and decade. Plus hundreds of exclusive music channels for you to enjoy. Plus music games and even karaoke. Try Roxy Premium and get a free Roxy karaoke mic. Get Roxy free on Sky Q, Fire TV, Android TV and Google TV. See www.roxy.tv. That's roxy.tv.
At Wex Photo Video, we have the right people to make sure moments like these are paired with the right camera for you. Why not capture your own precious moments with the Canon G7X Mark III with £50 cashback, or the Canon R6 with £225 cashback? Or how about the Panasonic Lumix S5 with 20 to 60mm lens plus shooting grip and spare battery with a special Christmas offer of £300 discount and £200 worth of free accessories? Why not give the gift of photography this Christmas? Head in store or go online to find your perfect gift.
26 minutes past 7 now. The murderer of 16-month-old Star Hobson has been jailed for a minimum of 25 years. Savannah Brockhill killed the toddler after months of neglect, cruelty and injury while she dated Star's mother, Frankie Smith. The judge said the final blow was a fatal punch or kick delivered with the force of a car crash, damaging Star's organs and causing internal bleeding.
Well, sadly, this was not an isolated attack, the judge going on to list other injuries, including brain damage and fractures to her skull, ribs and shin bone from separate acts of violence. Star's mother was sentenced to 8 years for causing or allowing Star's death. Well, Maggie Oliver is the founder of the Maggie Oliver Foundation. That's a charity which assists victims of sexual abuse, and joins us now. Maggie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Simon.
I mean, technically, the mother here could be out in 4 years.
Yeah, and you know, that's the shocking thing. I mean, hindsight is great, but you know, knowing what I do about this case, I mean, little Star was unable to fight for herself, but the red flags, in my opinion, were clear for everybody to see. This was not an isolated incident. You know, this little baby, I think she had fractures to her ribs, to her shin, to her skull. There was a long catalogue of abuse there and violence towards this tiny baby. And it isn't that nobody reported it. My understanding is that 5 separate reports of violence against this little girl were made to social services. And their job is not to go in with an opinion, to judge before they go in. Their job is to investigate. And there were clear signs in this case that there was real problems. And all too often, in my experience, both social services and police go in with a preformed judgment of what has happened, and that clouds the judgment, and they fail to investigate what is really going on. And you know, we are in the foundation, we are dealing with cases of abuse, sexual abuse, where the authorities have ignored evidence and they fail to investigate. And this case, for me, is a clear example of those failures again, in an area where I know that there is a lot of criticism of the social services. You know, the MP there has got a campaign going at the moment. I'm not blaming individual social workers, although I have to say that they are in a position where they can save a baby's life if they react and act in the way that is needed. You know, Star should have, at the very least, been put on the child protection register, not, you know, a phone call. Sorry.
What do you think needs to change? How does the system change so that those individuals either are better supported to make sure that when referrals are made, you know, they do what they're intended to, protect the child?
I think we do need accountability, but we need a joined-up system where action is taken when concerns are raised. You know, it's virtually impossible to challenge an opinion of a professional. So whether that is a social worker who says, you know, even as a police officer, Rosie, when I was in child protection, I left child protection because the number of times that I have heard social workers say, and I quote, "We are working with the family," when it was crystal clear that there was a problem, that things were going into crisis. You know, we need to change the way that, that these concerns are raised, and that people have a way forward when they're unhappy with these decisions. I've recently spoken to educational conferences where professionals, teachers, senior people in education were saying that they repeatedly raise concerns about children in schools and are equally fobbed off because they're being told there isn't the evidence, we can't do anything, and they find it extremely frustrating. So it's the process that needs to change. I think COVID and lockdowns and children being trapped in homes with abusive adults has only served to exacerbate the situation. And I think we're going to see a lot more cases like this over the coming months. I really do.
That's depressing. I mean, Maggie, you're a former detective constable with Greater Manchester Police. You were the whistleblower on the Rochdale child sex abuse scandal. You know, you have background. You've come across some pretty horrible people in your time. But in that doc yesterday, Savannah Brockhill was laughing as she was sentenced to life for this. I mean, you will have come across some pretty, as I say, pretty nasty people. What sort of person does that to a 16-month-old girl?
Somebody who is has no human decency, somebody who manipulates the system and actually doesn't have a heart. But the fact that social services have actually called ahead and made an appointment to see them, you know, people like that know how to play the system. They are really crafty, really conniving. And, you know, professionals' job is to see beyond that. This woman clearly was a problem. And I don't believe that all the signals weren't there and that that Star couldn't have been saved. You know, in my career, I have dealt with cases where it was very clear that children were being abused, where social services have overlooked that and sent children back into abusive homes. And my opinion is that you do not remove a child from a home. If you have got a situation where the parents that clearly love the child, but maybe don't have electric or don't have, you know, a lot of money, but you help them. In this situation, I believe there were at least 5 different people who raised concerns about this woman. She's clearly, you know, she was a bouncer. I think she was a boxer. My understanding is that the mother had learning difficulties and so was extremely vulnerable to start with. But all those things should have been picked up by the professionals. That is their job. Their job is to go in and to protect that baby. You know, she was 16 months old. There had been 5 separate referrals to them of violence, of abuse. Even the pictures I've seen, you know, the bruising to her face. I believe there were videos of this brutal woman punching this baby. You know, what more evidence do you need to protect a baby that can't speak up for themselves? You know, we are dealing with cases of abuse regularly in the foundation where victims are being ignored, even when they're speaking out. So what chance does a child of this age have if the professionals don't step in and protect her when it's as clear as the nose on your face that there was a problem there?
Maggie, thank you very much for speaking.
God, I hope she doesn't sleep at night ever.
Me too. I think she'll get into prison. I think she'll have a rough time. And all I can say is she deserves everything she gets, in my opinion.
And you're not alone, I suspect, in that. Maggie, it's really good to talk to you. We're always talking about dreadful cases, but it's always good to get your perspective. Thank you very much.
It's 25 minutes to 8 coming up. Will Omicron make staff shortages worse? What about supply chains in the run-up to Christmas? More on that in a moment.
You won't catch me buying a new car. Before you know it, you've outgrown it. You want all the latest tech? Nah, I'm a lease man, mate.
Lease a brand new car from Zen Auto with flexible pricing tailored to your budget.
Then after 3 years, you can change it for something new.
What are you doing?
Well, them. Not my real family, actors.
Want a new car you can change at the speed of life? Don't buy it, Zen it. Search Zen Auto.
Have you been wearing the same makeup forever without questioning if it still suits you? It might be time to rethink your routine. For me, it starts with the stack. Cream-based, multitasking, little pops of joy. I start with my BFF Skin Perfector to get the glow. Then I go on to a little bit of an eye to eye. And finally, I finish up with a little lip to cheek. Portable, stackable makeup. Is it time to rethink your routine? Build your stack at trinilondon.com.
Find your escape. Find your surprise.
Find your adventure. Find your exotic. Find your freedom. Find your wild side. Find yourself.
Trust Trailfinders. No one looks after you better.
When it comes to COVID testing for travel, Project Screen is a highly rated provider. We have the travel tests for you, whether it's a PCR test near you or a day 2 arrivals test. Our home test kits include next day delivery or visit one of our local testing pods. Book today at projectscreen.co.uk. Tests are reliable, results are fast, and there is customer support along the way. Project Screen by Pronetics, getting Britain back to travel.
Welcome back. Great British Breakfast. It's just after 25 minutes to 8.
Now, the government's launched a 3-month consultation on a sweeping overhaul of human rights law to expedite the deportation of foreign criminals. And one Portuguese national, Gilberto Neves Jardim, wants to stay in England after calling it home for more than 17 years, despite breaking the law.
Well, our Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley explains.
Portuguese national Gilberto is set to be deported from his home in Leeds after serving 2 prison sentences and receiving 15 court convictions for crimes including theft, offences against the person and breach of harassment orders. But despite breaking the law multiple times, Gilberto is demanding to stay in the UK. The dad of 2 fears his life will be taken by a gang in his home of Madeira upon his return, after he fled to Britain in 2004 after being shot by an armed robber who told Gilberto he would kill him if he reported him to the police.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the mistakes I did a long time ago, each day of my life, and I'm really sorry about that, okay? But everybody does mistakes, nobody's perfect, but I realize till now all that the big mistakes I've been doing, but I want to stay here. I want to remain here and see my kids grow up and go back to work again, rebuild my life again. It's not happening again. I realize what I've been doing that time. It's not happening again. I belong to Armley. This is home. This is home where I live in here. Most of the time I just thinking to ending my life. It's no way to keep living like this. They just feel like subhuman, honestly. This don't have a name. There's no way to live like this in these conditions.
Gilberto's lawyer believes he is being treated particularly unfairly by the Home Office and fears for the future of other immigrants like him who break the law if the Human Rights Act is amended.
The Home Office are inhumane how they leave people in this situation, and I do this for a job. There's no way in the world he's on his own in this. He feels like he's on his own in it, but he's not. It's so common. So many of my clients are left with nowhere to return and nowhere to support themselves, which is just the most inhumane situation you could ever find yourself in, I think. The easier the Home Office and Priti Patel make it to deport people, the harder it is for my job. So, over the years, when Theresa May came in, she reformed immigration law massively. And it became harder and harder. Legal aid got taken away from a lot of cases. Legal aid got dramatically reduced for the cases that were there under legal aid. So that makes it, solicitors, the profit making, aren't they? In general, they're only going to take on cases and help people if there's a profit in it for them, which means the cases where the legal aid is £100 fixed fee, solicitors don't want to take. So the easier it makes them, the harder it is for a solicitor to represent.
Gilberto's appeals under the Human Rights Act to stay in the UK have been rejected, and now he waits for deportation back to Portugal. Anna Riley for GB News.
Well, a Home Office spokesperson said, "We make no apology whatsoever for seeking to remove those who abuse our hospitality and have successfully deported 9,286 foreign national offenders since January 2019. Our new plan," the statement says, "for immigration will stop the abuse of the system and expedite the removal of those who have no right to be here."
You might have a view on Gilberto and whether he should stay, or there are plenty of flights to Madeira, even today, I'm just looking. GB Views at gbnews.uk, if you've got anything to say about that story.
Let's give you an overview of what else is going on today. Schools across the UK say they're prepared to switch to online learning if they have to next term, as more children stay at home because of COVID. Some children are being asked to take laptops home with them before Christmas in preparation. More than 30 local authorities told the BBC that some classes had moved online at local schools, and the government says it's committed to ensuring that schools in England stay open in January.
The woman who murdered 16-month-old Star Hobson in West Yorkshire has been jailed for life. 28-year-old Savannah Brockhill has been given a minimum term of 25 years. The toddler was assaulted and psychologically abused for months before suffering catastrophic injuries. Her mother and Brockhill's former partner, 20-year-old Frankie Smith, was cleared of murder, but has been sentenced to 8 years for causing or allowing her child's death.
Business groups are increasing pressure on the government to assist firms suffering from the rise in COVID cases. The CBI is urging ministers to provide support in lockstep with future restrictions, while UK hospitality has called for business rates to be deferred and VAT discounts extended. The spread of the Omicron variant has hit consumer confidence and seen hospitality bookings cancelled. The Treasury does not plan to extend support beyond current measures.
A judge has told the TV personality Katie Price she was lucky to avoid prison at her sentencing for a drink-driving crash. Price flipped her car on her way to visit a friend on the 28th of September in West Sussex. The judge who handed her a 16-week suspended jail term said her incredibly selfish actions could have easily killed somebody. Sussex police intend to appeal the sentence handed down at Crawley Magistrates Court.
Strictly Come Dancing star AJ Adudu says she's frustrated and upset of being injured ahead of Saturday's final, but has vowed she's doing everything she can to make sure she can dance. Well, the TV presenter is due to take to the dance floor in the grand final on BBC One this weekend, but she's been unable to rehearse since Monday after injuring the ligament in the arch of her right foot. It's day one of the second Ashes test in Adelaide. We've actually got former England cricketer Stuart with us in the studio this morning to take us through. But this morning, a moment ago, Australia were 76 for 1. Stuart Broad took the wicket of opener Marcus Harris for just 3 runs, and an added bonus for England, which is sad that this is a bonus, but it is. Aussie captain Pat Cummins had to miss the match after being called to self-isolate as a close contact of a COVID case.
Football, Mikel Arteta saluted the attitude and commitment of his Arsenal players after they beat West Ham 2-0 to climb into the top 4. The Gunners
won comfortably thanks to goals and in the second half. And let's look at the weather. Today...
It's not to be sneezed at, which I very nearly did. Forgive me.
There's going to be a few spots of rain. They're going to linger in the far north. Elsewhere, though, it's going to be dry with variable cloud, and it's going to be bright. The best of the brightness, though, will be in the east with longer sunny spells. It's 7:45 now.
Wow, can I just say, wow, the texts on Gilberto, I mean, it won't be a surprise. All of them, Gilberto saying he should be deported. What on earth is he still doing here? Gilberto says everyone makes mistakes, true, but he's made at least 15. Time for him to go home, says Malcolm. Very happy to see him deported. If you want to live in the UK, don't commit crime. We need to get tough on people like him. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, mate, says Tone. There's no evidence suggesting Gilberto is anything other well, I won't read that one. Anyway, the criminal who broke the law in this country, I have no sympathy whatsoever. A lot more should be deported. Should have thought about his family before he broke the law in this country, says Pamela. And the machine is going like this. Lots of you. Very strong reaction to that piece from Anna Riley on Gilberto. and the fact he's still in this country is upsetting a lot of you.
Well, you can keep your views coming in. It would be better if we could read them out. gbviews@gbnews.uk. And a fascinating conversation that Anna has had with him to understand at least his perspective. And, of course, we gave you the Home Office's one as well.
Now, the Cabinet's been told that the spread of the Omicron variant may trigger mass staff shortages similar to the pingdemic that was set off by millions self-isolating over the summer. Healthcare and schools are sectors facing huge disruption in particular, with 1 in every 30 primary school pupils in England absent last week for COVID-related reasons. NHS staff are already working extra shifts to cover for colleagues who are self-isolating. Government figures also show that more and more teachers are absent for COVID-related reasons.
Joyce Pinfield, Vice Chairman of the National Care Association, and Jeff Butcher, Chief Executive of care home operator Blackadder Corporation, join us now. Good morning to you both. Let's just start, if we can, with you, Joyce. What are you worried about, and are you already seeing a problem of staff shortages?
We've been very worried about the social care sector for a very, very long time. Successive governments have really pushed social care reform and their problems into the background, and we have been suffering for many, many years now. We've had workforce shortages for many years. We went into the pandemic with well over 100,000 shortages. With an ageing population, the demographics show that we will need more and more care in the future, which means, of course, we need more and more carers to look after those people. So during the pandemic, our staff have worked absolutely tirelessly to try to keep our people safe, who are the most vulnerable people in society. And yet we are still fairly ignored. We've had fairly short-term grants to help us through, but we are suffering from people who have to either have COVID or have to isolate, which decreases the workforce pool that we have. Also, we're trying to make sure that we don't have agency, or we only have carers who come into our sector who only work in one care setting. This is to try and keep our vulnerable residents safe. So now we are faced with Omicron and even more isolating staff, which really does put added pressure onto the sector, which I just think is unsustainable.
Jeff, well, let's talk about that. Unsustainable is the view from Joyce, but it's actually worse than that, isn't it, on the front line? What does it mean in a care home when you're short of staff?
Well, it means that you can't actually provide safe care. And I think this is the key issue, that the care associations have consistently underplayed this with government. You know, if you get to a point in a care home where you can't fully staff it, then you are not providing the quality of care that's required. And this is a major risk. And also, I think it's been underplayed the amount of extra resource care homes have to put in to make visiting possible for residents. And whilst that's very important, that's something that probably has to give when the staff shortages really cut in. The point I'd like to make is that as Joyce said, for years people have been telling the government that this is a problem, but nothing has been done. And I think the crisis has been underplayed. The care sector currently is estimated to be short of 100,000 people. It's probably a bit more than that. And if we're going to see, as we're already starting to do, increased numbers having to self-isolate or being away from work because they have COVID, this is absolutely going to bring the sector to its knees. And I think the other thing that Joyce hasn't mentioned is the NHS is now putting pressure on us to take residents so that they can discharge and clear beds ready for COVID. And if we don't have the staff, we can't do that. So it's going to increase the problems on the NHS, which already looks to us as a broken system.
Joyce, just to get your view on that, things like visits, of course, what we're all trying to do now is limit interaction so we can save Christmas. What are you doing about visits over Christmas?
Yes, well, visits have been a bit of a problem all the way through the pandemic. Of course, we were close to visits for a long time, and then we have been having visits in a very controlled way by appointments, lateral flow tests to be shown or to be done when they enter the care home, or full PPE, and then only to be seeing their loved ones in special areas which can be infection control cleaned. I have heard of one major provider who is actually stopping visiting already due to the worries over this new variant. I myself, at the moment, I am trying to restrict visiting, but allow it in a controlled way. Many care providers, like myself, we do have pods, so unfortunately there is no contact. The area I'm in has quite a high COVID outbreak at the moment, so naturally we are taking every precaution that we possibly can. Visiting is so important, though, for the well-being of residents, and naturally at this time of year, we do want to try and enable visiting as much as possible. But it does have to be in a controlled way, and we do hope that relatives will understand that we do need to try and take every precaution, not only for their loved one, but for everybody else who is within the care home and for our staff.
Yeah. Well, Joyce, it's good to hear from Joyce Primfield and Jeff Butcher, Chief Executive of Blackadder Corporation. Thank you both very much for joining us this morning.
Now it's 10 minutes to 8. Coming up here, Australia's batsmen are beginning to get on top of day one of the second Ashes. We'll have the latest in a moment after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. Another grey day for the vast majority, but another dry day for most of us as well. There is some rain across northern parts of Scotland that'll only slowly peter out. That's being caused by this weather front, but it's this chunky area of high pressure that's been moving in for the past 24 hours, and once it's here, it's set to stay. It's going to bring a lot of dry weather through the weekend and beyond. As I said, though, it's not completely dry today. There is some rain across northern Scotland, clearing from the mainland, but likely to linger in Shetland into the afternoon. Some breaks in the cloud, but there's also some fog patches around as well, so just bear that in mind across parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire. That fog could last for most of the day. For most places, though, it's just cloudy and dry, and temperatures maybe a touch down on yesterday's values, but still actually above average for this time of the year. During this evening, we will again see some breaks developing in the cloud that could allow some fog patches to form. So again, parts of North East England, North East Scotland, maybe North Wales too. Elsewhere, generally just staying cloudy and dry, maybe a bit of drizzle at times coming into the Western Isles. The rain should finally peter out across Shetland. Temperatures are going to drop down to single figures for sure, maybe even a pocket of frost or two across parts of northern Scotland where we've got the clear skies. But again, there could be some fog around during Friday morning, which may last for most of the day. However, for much of northern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Wales, we should see some sunny spells. Elsewhere, again, for the majority, it's just drab but dry, and temperatures just dropping down another degree or so. So single figures for most as a high on Friday. And speaking of high, this pressure system is sitting with us through Friday, Saturday and beyond, even into the start of Christmas week, which promises a lot of dry weather, but a lot of cloud as well. Increasing chance of seeing some persistent fog patches and also turning a bit colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Coming up to 8 o'clock with all the cricket news, here is Rosie.
Now, after an early breakthrough for Stuart Broad, Australia's batsmen are beginning to get on top of England midway through day one of the second Ashes test in Adelaide. Broad got opener Marcus Harris out for just 3 runs thanks to a spectacular catch from Jos Buttler. But the wicket-keeper went from hero to villain after lunch, dropping the dangerous Marcus Labuschagne when he was on just 21.
Well, Labuschaigne's still there. David Warner's just reached his 50, and a few moments ago, Australia were 86 for 1. Former England bowler Stuart Meaker has been watching for us this morning. Good morning. It's sounding horribly familiar, this. They're beginning to run away with this.
Well, I say run away is probably a little bit too far ahead of ourselves. I think it's attritional. It's not a lot of events happening for England other than the sort of drop catch from Jos, like you say, sort of...
Was it a drop catch? Should he have got it?
I think he should have gotten it, considering he pulled off an absolute stunner for the first wicket. And he'll be disappointed having looked at the replay. But it's not gotten ahead of England too much just yet, and still a lot to play for when the night sort of comes in and then a bit of the dew comes into play on the wicket.
Yeah, because it's a ping pong game. Now, explain what that means for a player. What is different about when darkness falls?
Well, it's usually the conditions overhead play a big part in the pitch and the moisture levels around. So obviously when the night comes in, the temperatures drop, you tend to get a little bit of dew on the pitch, dew on the outfield, and that creates a little bit of extra seam movement off of the wicket, which usually, hopefully, makes it tougher for the batsman to play against. So that will hopefully come to play in this evening session later on.
Does that benefit us?
As a bowling unit, yes. But obviously, at some point, we will be batting in the evening, which makes it a lot more difficult. And Australia tend to have a little bit more pace in their attack than we do. So any seam movement off of the pitch is a lot harder to face.
Broad and Anderson are in, so rather a lot riding on them at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've been an amazing combination for England for so many years. You know, it was quite sad that they weren't involved in the first test, and I think maybe...
Well, hindsight suggests that was a bad call.
Well, I mean, Jimmy was obviously because of injury, and they were a little bit cautious about putting him in too early, and I think perhaps Broad would have been sorely missed and having a bit of experience. Obviously, you can say that looking at the result, didn't go our way. But I think now you're seeing why they've been so fruitful for England for such a long period of time.
Do you feel any sort of sympathy for the players right now?
Sympathy in terms of they're playing in front of 1,000 million people and
the
enjoying
conditions
themselves?
are complicated. They're away from home. They've got not the team maybe they'd want to be playing with. They're not even playing against a full-strength Australian team because they don't have the captain there.
It's not a charity, you know.
Well, I know. It's not... As a sports player, is that the conditions you'd want to go out and play?
Well, no, I think you'd want to play in England where it swings around and nips around as a bowler. I think they, just listening to Stuart Broad there and there's a little interview he had at the drinks break, the pitch is a lot slower than they anticipated. And I think as a bowling unit, when you're put in to bowl first, that plays a lot on your psyche, especially when you're 1-0 down in a test series.
Right, well, we better let you go back and resume. Is it misery yet, or you've still got some hope?
I've got a lot of hope for this England side, don't you worry.
Have you? Good. Well, so that'll be good news in an hour coming then. Look forward to that. Stuart, thanks very much.
No pressure.
Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come. Lots of you getting in touch. GBViews at gbnews.uk on a host of topics.
Particularly Gilberto.
Yes.
See you in a minute. Hello, very good morning to you. It's, 8 o'clock on Thursday, the 16th of December. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on the Great British Breakfast with Simon McCoy and Rosie Wright.
A very wary Christmas. The public's being urged to scale back plans in the run-up to festivities following the rapid spread of the Omicron variant as COVID cases hit their highest level ever. So what do you plan to do this Christmas, and particularly in the run-up? You can let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Tory rebels turn up the heat on the Prime Minister, warning things must change by next year or he'll have to go, after delivering the biggest blow to his premiership with nearly 100 of his own MPs turning against him.
A mother who allowed her 16-month-older to be murdered by her lover will be freed in 4 years, while the toddler's kidder who laughed in the dock as she was sentenced will serve a minimum of 25 years. Has justice been served?
Business groups are calling on the government to help companies suffering in the wake of booking cancellations spurred by the Omicron variant. So what else should the government be doing to help businesses?
And it's day one of the second Ashes test in Adelaide. No Captain Cummins for the Aussies after he was forced to self-isolate. We'll have the latest for you throughout the morning with former England player Stuart Meaker.
So the UK has recorded its highest number of daily COVID cases since the beginning of the pandemic, with 78,610 new cases reported yesterday. Well, that's 10 cases more and above the previous record.
More than 10,000 cases.
More than 10,000 cases above the previous record reached during January's lockdown. Almost 20,000 more than the previous day.
England's Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty warned more records could be broken in the coming weeks as we head into the festive season. Well, earlier on the programme, we spoke to the Shadow Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Wes Streeting, on what this data means and how it will affect plans for the festive period.
This variant, the Omicron variant, is spreading fast. In fact, it's spreading faster than any other variant. And the risk here is that whether or not the disease is more severe than other variants, that remains to be seen. Because it's spreading so fast and because it will affect significant numbers of people, even if a smaller proportion of people who get Omicron end up in hospital, it will still be a smaller proportion of a far greater number. And there's a real challenge facing the NHS, both in terms of patients coming through the door and the pressure that places on services, but also on staff who may themselves find themselves off sick and absent, and what that does in terms of care. And that's the single biggest concern we've got, and that's what's driving decision making around the Omicron cases at the moment, and why Parliament voted for a few important restrictions this week. We're listening to the Chief Medical Officer, we're listening to the Chief Scientific Advisor and our own advisors too, and watching the numbers very closely. What I would say to the government and to the country is, as we've shown this week, Labour will put public health before party politics. If further measures are necessary, we stand ready to help so that Boris Johnson can focus on public health and not his own personal political problems. Well, we listen to the Chief Medical Officer, the Chief Scientific Advisor, and to the NHS, and we don't trust Boris Johnson, but we do trust them, and so it seems does the public, because despite what they've seen in recent weeks and the shattered trust and confidence in Boris Johnson, the sense of double standards, the do as I say, not as I do approach of his government, people are listening to what the medical advisors are saying at these press conferences. They're voting with their feet. They're thinking about their own Christmas plans and taking sensible precautions to enjoy Christmas safely this year, which is what we want to see. We've all got a responsibility to the public and to public health, and we've got to try and help the government to do the right thing in a national crisis. I think that's what people want to see. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be sticking the boot into the government on things like NHS waiting times, waiting lists, staff shortages, all of which were big problems before the pandemic, and led me to also say the other day that it's not just that they didn't fix the roof while the sun was shining. It seems like they dismantled the roof and removed the floorboards, and as a result, it's been a lot harder to manage this pandemic. So I will make robust criticisms of the government, but I will do so in a way that's rooted in evidence, and also, treats my colleagues in other political parties as human beings, decent human beings, trying to do the right thing. We'll have disagreements about whether they're doing the right thing, but we'll conduct debate in what I hope will be a more respectful and civilised way than we've seen from Conservative MPs.
That was the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, talking to us a short time ago.
And he said he was agonising over what to do with plans this weekend. And that is the real battle. Are you listening to Chris Whitty? Are you listening to the Prime Minister? About looking at how many days is it? 10 days or so until Christmas. If you get coronavirus now, you'll be isolating, you'll miss the big day. Of course, Christmas isn't important for everyone, but it is for lots of us a time where we get together with family members. So let us know if you're making any tough, tricky decisions, or you're just going hell for leather and doing what you would have done anyway, you can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk.
You going hell for leather?
No, I just cancelled a plan. I was going to go and see a friend and her newborn baby this afternoon, and I don't think it's a very good idea, so I'm not going. That's why lots of people are saying this could be locked down by stealth, people making decisions to not do things, to not get on the train, to not make that visit, to not go out for dinner, to try and avoid getting Omicron. And, you know, I'm one of those.
Right, as long as we know. Right, well, as the booster continues to be rolled out, the company responsible for the Moderna vaccine says its initial 2 doses are not enough to effectively fight the Omicron variant. Moderna released data on Wednesday showing a booster shot could increase a person's antibody levels 20-fold to effectively fight the virus. The demand for the boosters shot up in recent days as more than 600,000 people received the jab yesterday in order to protect themselves over the festive period.
Well, let's find out more. There has been incredible demand for the booster jab, but also what concerns people have over Christmas. Our Northwest reporter Bradley Harris is live for us now. Bradley, a very good morning to you. What's the booster take-up been like in the northwest of England?
Yeah, well, as you say, Rosie, incredible demand for the booster jab, and there's certainly been a change of scenery in certain parts of the northwest of England. Where I'm standing in St Peter's Square in Manchester city centre, there was a huge reaction to the booster jab yesterday. Massive queues going right the way round the town hall, next to the tram stop, hundreds of people queuing up. Some people have been waiting almost 2 hours to get their booster jab yesterday. We know that in Chester, the cathedral there has been transformed into a walk-in site with army personnel helping to distribute booster jabs there. I know just on Tuesday, Whalley Range Tennis Club had queues there and security stopping people from joining because they were running out of jabs. So certainly there's been a big take-up of the booster. Yesterday, I was in one of the queues here in St Peter's Square to find out what people were thinking, why they've come to join the queue. Let's just hear some of their thoughts.
I think it's good. It's really good to see the turnout, especially considering they said young people didn't want vaccines to start with. It's good to see it sold out.
Quite a lot of people right now are getting like COVID at uni. Like we know quite a lot of people in our accommodation who are getting COVID, and I don't want to have to be stuck at here and not go home.
My mum is part of the kind of vulnerable cohort, so she's got kind of type 1 diabetes. So it's a little kind of late to be telling us that you kind of need the booster, but obviously now that we've got the walk-ins, I've come today to kind of do that so my family's safe for Christmas, really.
My dad lives in France, so we need to get vaccinated in order to go visit him. It's been about 2 years since I've seen him now, so...
I mean, personally, I'm not too bothered. I mean, I've had 2 jabs now. I've not caught Rona since it's been around. I've not been that sensible, but absolutely fine. I mean, obviously, it's no joke and whatnot, but yeah, it's just to get my mum off my chest, to be honest. Get off my back.
The place opened at 3, I believe, to start allowing people to let in, but the queue was already all the way round by the time we arrived, and that was about 2:30. So clearly everyone's eager, and I love that. It's really, really good.
How long have you been waiting, and how long do you think you've got left to go?
We've been waiting about an hour, maybe an hour and a half now. I'd say we're coming up to the last like half an hour now, but it's worth it.
It's interesting, isn't it, to see people queuing up for almost 2 hours to get this booster jab. We've seen the measures, the working from home order, and also NHS COVID passes, and the announcement from the Prime Minister Boris Johnson in the press conference last night, and Chris Whitty advising people to prioritise who you should see at Christmas. There are echoes and a sense that there is a lockdown without actually saying it's a lockdown.
So much for speaking to us. Brad will be keeping us up to date and across the booster jab rollout across the morning.
You're watching the Great British Breakfast now, and letters of no confidence in the Prime Minister will be accepted by email over Christmas as the rebellion of Tory MPs grows. Chairman Sir Graham Brady will allow Tories to register their dissatisfaction with Boris Johnson's leadership before Parliament is due to return on January the 5th.
The rebellion against the Prime Minister has gathered strength after the entire leadership of the 1922 committee joined the already 100-strong backbench revolt against the government's COVID pass scheme. Conservatives have already warned the Prime Minister that more than 24 letters challenging his leadership could be submitted if he does not reset his entire operation. They cite the alleged lockdown, Downing Street parties and the Tories Leave scandal as additional reasons they have lost trust in his leadership.
John Rentoul is the chief political commentator at The Independent. John, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Simon.
So how much trouble is Boris Johnson in? Or has he just got over this particular little spat?
Oh, no, he hasn't. I mean, he's in all sorts of trouble. I mean, the trouble with Boris Johnson, though, is you sort of sense that he thrives on being in trouble and pushing things to the limit and knowing that he'll be able to get out with a cheeky smile and a silly joke. But no, I think an awful lot of his MPs are very, very irritated by him. The gratitude to him for having won them the election 2 years ago has completely evaporated. It was a remarkable achievement, and he was the only person who could have done it. But gratitude doesn't last long in politics, and the size of that rebellion was it took the chamber's breath away. You heard the gasps when the numbers were announced.
Do you think the tide is turning on him?
Well, that's a difficult one to answer, isn't it? Because there isn't a general election coming, and I'm not sure that although Conservative MPs have no love for the Prime Minister, they don't yet regard him as a threat to their seats. That's what's going to get rid of him in the end, isn't it? I mean, if they think that he's going to lose them the next election, they will get rid of him as quickly and ruthlessly as they got rid of Margaret Thatcher. And you've got to remember, they adored Margaret Thatcher. They do not adore Boris Johnson. So they'll be completely ruthless when they have to be. But that moment is not yet now. I mean, just because Labour have gone into the lead in the opinion polls doesn't mean that the next election is a write-off yet.
I'm just trying to find it in the papers. There's a picture of Liz Truss, her Christmas card this morning, where she's looking all Prime Minister. Oh, here it is. Here it is in the Telegraph. She's looking all Prime Ministerial, and a lot of people are saying, interesting timing. Is this going on behind the scenes? Are people really lining themselves up on the basis that his days are numbered?
Well, it's not behind the scenes, is it? That's on that's in the Telegraph. That's all over everywhere. It's not so much prime ministerial as regal. That's Liz Truss running for Queen. But Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss have been manoeuvring more or less in public for the right to the succession. That doesn't mean they think it's going to happen imminently, but they've got to position themselves. They've got to ingratiate themselves with the MPs who are increasingly fed up with the Prime Minister and convince them that they would do a better job, which is tricky for Rishi Sunak because, of course, he's just put up everybody's taxes, and that's one of the things that has gone down extremely badly with the Tory backbenches. But he's trying to convince them, trying to persuade them that he was against Plan B. He's not in favour of restrictions. And he's on their side. And Liz Truss is doing exactly the same thing.
How does Boris Johnson restore confidence in his party and also in the public?
Well, you saw he tried to do that at Prime Minister's questions yesterday. He said at the end, look, I took the very difficult decision to release the restrictions in July the 19th, Freedom Day, as Conservative MPs call it. And I was criticised at the time. The Labour Party opposed it, but it was the right decision. And indeed, he was vindicated in that. So he's got to try and persuade Conservative MPs that he really is on their side underneath. It's just that he has been persuaded by Chris Whitty and the scientists that he absolutely has to take the action he has taken. And he's hoping that, I think he's gambling on the Omicron wave not being as bad as it might be, in which case he'll be able to unlock again and re-ingratiate himself with some of his backbench critics.
Yeah. It's events, John, isn't it? It's always events.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you look back, I mean, the next election's 2.5 years away. If you look back 2 years ago, that was when Parliament was in deadlock. We were coming up to the general election, and the situation, completely transformed in a very short space of time. Nobody can make predictions, and Boris Johnson is extremely resilient. He's a remarkable politician, and I don't think people should write him off yet.
John, always good to talk to you. Nice to see you. John Rentoul, thank you.
Well, we can go live to Dover now. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, is there. There's been some activity this morning. Mark, just bring us up to speed. What's been happening?
Well, this activity began late last night, actually, 10:30 last night. The first of these small boats, predicted to be another surge today because of the weather conditions being very calm in the channel. The first time really in about 10 days that boats are now able to cross the channel. These small, flimsy vessels haven't been able to do that for more than a week now, but they are kicking off. As I say, 10:30 last night, the first boat left, was intercepted by a French vessel, first of all, but then escorted into UK waters, picked up by the Dover lifeboat and taken back here to Dover Harbour at 3 a.m. this morning. Now, there are other incidents that Dover lifeboats have responded to. They've just arrived back again at Dover Harbour within the last hour. So more than 60 migrants have been landed back at Dover so far. But as we speak, there are several other incidents that are now ongoing in the middle of the English Channel. It's just after 8, we're in the 8 a.m. hour now. I confidently predict it come 8 o'clock this evening, I'll still be here talking about incidents ongoing in the channel. It's likely to follow the pattern that we've seen on other days where the weather conditions have allowed these boats to come across.
Mark, since you were last there, before the last bout of bad weather, has anything changed? Are there more border patrol crossing checks? Are we going to see the same again, is what I'm asking.
Unfortunately, I think we are going to see exactly the same again. Now, this was, or is, a big tester for the French government because, as you point out there, in the wake of that terrible tragedy in the Channel in which 27 lives were lost, we had this almighty row between the French President Emmanuel Macron and the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, fingers being pointed in both directions, and the French flatly turning down an offer by the British to give them extra personnel to help patrol the beaches of northwestern France to stop these boats launching in the first place, which has got to be the goal, right? But the French said, no, we're able to do it. We'll put our own personnel in increasing numbers on the beaches. So today is the tester, but look, we're, as I say, just 8 in the morning now, and already reports of a number of boats in the channel, so it doesn't look like the added security that the French have promised have made any difference at all.
Mark, we'll be back to you later. Any developments, come straight back to us. Thank you very much in the meantime.
Still to come here on the programme, Childline has warned that this time of year could be especially difficult for abused, distressed children across the UK. More on that after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. Another grey day for the vast majority, but another dry day for most of us as well. There is some rain across northern parts of Scotland that'll only slowly peter out. That's being caused by this weather front, but it's this chunky area of high pressure that's been moving in for the past 24 hours and once it's here, it's set to stay. It's going to bring a lot of dry weather through the weekend and beyond. As I said, though, it's not completely dry today. There is some rain across northern Scotland, clearing from the mainland, but likely to linger in Shetland into the afternoon. Some breaks in the cloud, but there's also some fog patches around as well, so just bear that in mind across parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire. That fog could last for most of the day. For most places, though, it's just cloudy and dry, and temperatures maybe a touch down on yesterday's values, but still actually above average for this time of the year. during this evening, we will again see some breaks developing in the cloud that could allow some fog patches to form. So again, parts of northeast England, northeast Scotland, maybe North Wales too. Elsewhere, generally just staying cloudy and dry, maybe a bit of drizzle at times coming into the Western Isles. The rain should finally peter out across Shetland. Temperatures are going to drop down to single figures for sure, maybe even a pocket of frost or two across parts of northern Scotland where we've got the clear skies. But again, there could be some fog around during Friday morning, which may last for most of the day. However, for much of northern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Wales, we should see some sunny spells. Elsewhere, again, for the majority, it's just drab but dry, and temperatures just dropping down another degree or so. So single figures for most as a high on Friday. And speaking of high, this pressure system is sitting with us through Friday, Saturday and beyond, even into the start of Christmas week, which promises a lot of dry weather, but a lot of cloud as well. Increasing chance of seeing some persistent fog patches and also turning a bit colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Welcome back, 24 minutes past 8. We've been talking about the decisions we're all having to make about Christmas parties. Should we go ahead with them? Should we have family gatherings? This email actually just gets it. This is from Steve, who says, after cancelling our 2021 trip to see Nutcracker with our two gorgeous granddaughters, we decided this year we would go to see The Snowman at the Peacock Theatre in London. The plan this weekend is for 7 grandchildren and 6 adults to see the show. We plan still to go and eat together afterwards. Kids grow up fast. We cannot miss another year. And that's absolutely how everybody's having this discussion right now and balancing, the needs to keep family life going, particularly at Christmas, and concerns over this new variant. It's common sense and families' own decisions, isn't it?
And with the Labour Health Shadow Secretary, Wes Streeting, told us he was agonising over what to do with his plans this weekend. And we're all having similar types of conversations with friends, family. Should we do that? What about Christmas? So if you're making decisions like that, let us know. You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk.
I have no problems at all. It was never, no friends, no family. It's just the two of us. That's it. No problem.
Would you go to a big party this weekend? See, that's some of the... Yes. Right, let's move on. Children's mental health charity Childline, they're preparing for, tragically, another extremely busy Christmas for them. The service expects an influx of calls for its volunteer counsellors who give up their time to provide a vital outlet for children and young people. Last year, Childline provided more than 6,000 counselling sessions during the Christmas period, 400 of which those calls were about abuse.
Well, young people using the service also discuss mental and emotional health, suicidal thoughts, family relationships, and the issue of self-harm. Well, head of local campaigns at the NSPCC and spokesperson for Childline, Helen Westerman, joins us now. And Helen, here we are, a second Christmas with youngsters who are surrounded by people having the discussions we're just having. Everybody's a bit uncertain, and that really has an impact on children's mental health, doesn't it?
Indeed, it does. So issues that children contact us all year round about, such as their mental health, abuse, feelings of isolation, can sadly still negatively impact them at Christmas time. And children will watch all the adverts on the TV, and there's that kind of expectation that life will be happy and everything's going to be wonderful. And for many children living in households where abuse and neglect is taking place, that's far from the truth. And with schools shut, those usual forms of help and support through teachers and other adults in the children's life is diminished. And that's why many young people turn to Childline.
Kind of conversations that you're with, obviously without breaching confidentiality, but what are the issues that children are bringing up and needing help with?
Children are feeling very lonely, so we saw an increase in the number of children contacting us about feeling lonely. They're worried about missing out on some of those kind of big milestone events. As you mentioned, the past 18 months for children and young people has been particularly tough. But for other young people, they'll be disclosing abuse and neglect that's taking place at home. They'll be worried about friendship. They'll be worried about online harm. So a whole myriad of different things. And our 1,200 trained counsellors will be able to answer all those calls.
Helen, there's a real problem here, isn't there? Because whenever you put the television on, all people are talking about is COVID. Adults are talking about very little else and how they're going to respond to this. And children pick up on that, don't they?
Oh, indeed they do. And in the first week of the lockdown back in March 2020, we saw 10,000 visits to a place on the Childline website called Calm Zone. And that's where children could have tips and advice on how to manage anxiety and stress. We saw huge increases in the number of children coming to the Childline website to look for particular resources, information about the pandemic. Many weren't wanting to worry whoever was at home, whether that was mum, dad, or whoever was caring for them, because they recognised that they indeed were worried themselves, maybe juggling jobs and homeschooling and other family commitments. So children were turning to us for help and support and recognising when they needed it.
Helen Westman, thank you very much for speaking to us, spokesperson for Childline and also head of local campaigns at NSPCC.
Now, as we've been hearing over the last 24 hours, inflation is back, and boy, is it back. The Bank of England will be under pressure to put investors at ease ahead of a decision whether or not to raise interest rates. That's later today. Economists thought the consumer price index rate would rise from 4.2% to something like 4.7% in November. Instead, it leapt to 5.1%, and it's now at the highest level in a decade. So, will the Bank of England raise its interest rate, or will it hold fire?
Well, joining us now is Sam Collins, Senior Policy Advisor at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Thank you very much for joining us. So, Simon just asked that question. Will the Bank of England raise interest rates?
I mean, they really ought to raise interest rates, I think, at this point. At the very least, they need to start withdrawing quantitative easing, which is basically in old-fashioned parlance, printing money. They need to start unwinding some of those emergency measures, because at the moment it's just inflating the money supply and causing inflation to go up.
And the difficulty for the Bank of England is that everybody assumed they would be putting interest rates up 2 months ago. They had second thoughts, and the news since has only got worse. So they're trying to balance this, and it's a difficult call, isn't it, this one?
Oh, absolutely it is. You've got the Omicron variant. That's going to cause them quite a lot of worry about whether or not to raise rates this time around. There's a very good chance that I think that they'll hold over raising interest rates until February, perhaps, when we've got a sense of what sort of restrictions are going to stay in longer term. Frankly, they need to start really indicating that rates are going to go up, because at the moment, people are just running around like headless chickens a bit because they don't really know what the Bank of England is going to do. And they see prices keep going up. It's affecting people in the back pocket. And really, the Bank of England needs to step in at this point, because the inflation has been caused by two main issues this time around. There's food and energy price inflation has gone up significantly, and we've seen it across the world. This isn't just a UK problem. But even once you strip out that, you still have the rest of the consumer price index, the rest of the inflation rate, running at double the Bank of England's target. So this is a problem right across the economy, and the Bank of England really needs to step in very soon to do something about it.
Which areas of the industry are hurting the hardest? Obviously, hospitality. And which do you think are going to struggle the most in the next few months?
I mean, hospitality is the obvious one, as you say. I mean, with the not just from inflation, but just restrictions, the possibility of another lockdown, so much will depend on things out that have nothing to do with inflation. Government decisions around new restrictions coming in January, running through perhaps until March. The government's already talking about Plan C, Plan D, and the government needs to provide some stability and some certainty, because frankly, more often than not, businesses need certainty more than they need good policy.
OK, well, it's good of you to join us, Sam. Thanks very much for your time this morning. Sam Collins there.
It's gone 8:30 with the Great British Breakfast. Now, Omicron's emergence has increased uncertainty over previously optimistic forecasts that Scotland's economy would be able to recover to pre-pandemic levels by the spring. Economists from the University of Strathclyde Business School are predicting the economy will get back to its pre-pandemic size by May, but they warn the impact of the emerging coronavirus variant and new restrictions could jeopardise the speed of recovery.
The research suggests that the hospitality and retail sectors are particularly vulnerable. Well, Mary Spowage is the director of the Fraser of Allender Institute, the body that conducted the research. First of all, have I got your name right?
You have, well done.
Thank you very much. It's very difficult. You start an interview and having got the name wrong, it can destroy the whole thing. So we've sorted that one out. So how serious a threat is this variant now to the Scottish economy?
Yeah, well, I guess what we would say in our report today is that it's very uncertain. Economic forecasting is never an easy business, of course, but particularly over the last 18 months, it's been particularly difficult. And while we've seen, growth that we couldn't have dreamed of, I think, last December, the economy recovered much more quickly than we were expecting. The threat of this new variant and any associated economic restrictions obviously may cast a shadow over what we're predicting for growth in the spring of 2022.
I just wonder how you can actually make these predictions when 2.5 weeks ago we hadn't heard of Omicron, and look how dramatically it's going to change our lives.
It is very difficult, and we do our best to set out the uncertainties around our forecasts. At the moment, we have slightly softened our forecast compared to our forecast in September, and that is due to data in the autumn, which definitely suggests that growth has stalled. And there's a lot of emerging evidence, actually, that Scotland's recovery is lagging behind the UK as a whole. So that's what we've reflected in our current forecasts. In terms of reflecting the impact that Omicron itself may have and the associated economic restrictions, that is just so uncertain right now. So what we've done is be upfront about the fact that there are a lot of uncertainties, and all of the economic impact depends on the restrictions that are put in place which may be well be necessary for public health reasons, but also the government support that may go along with that to make sure that businesses who perhaps aren't able to operate as normal are able to kind of survive through what would be a crucial revenue generating period for them, so that when restrictions are able to be eased, perhaps in the spring, they're able to still be there, still operating and ready to benefit from, no doubt, what will be a huge boom in consumer spending.
Talk about lifting them in spring. We're entering a period now of be careful and cut down on the parties. And then there's a real fear that there will be a proper lockdown come January.
Yeah, and obviously in Scotland, we've been getting probably more strict messaging about both reducing social contact and perhaps limiting the number of households that you interact with. And to be honest, reduce social contact as much as possible. And the First Minister was quite clear last week that she felt that Christmas parties shouldn't go ahead. So yeah, there's a lot of messaging that the public are getting right now, which essentially will mean that hospitality settings in particular are going to see probably a wave of cancellations and a lot less revenue in order to kind of try and protect public health.
Mary, thank you very much for speaking to us, Director of the Fraser of the Allender Institute, body that conducted that research. Really appreciate your time.
Now, as we all consider how we're going to approach Christmas, some people may have booked holidays, trips to France, maybe to Paris. Well, France has just announced toughening restrictions on UK travellers, and my word, they are toughening them. They're going to say that travellers from the UK will have to show a PCR or an antigen test less than 24 hours old. At the moment it's 48 hours, but now they want it to be 24 hours. And only French citizens returning from the UK or British people living in France will be allowed to come to France. And travellers will have to give a compelling reasons to be allowed to enter the country. People arriving from the UK will have to isolate at a location they choose, and that isolation ending for 48 hours afterwards if they show a negative test. So if people were planning a long weekend Christmas break in Paris, this is going to be dramatic news. So we'll be hearing more on that. The French government spokesman has been on air this morning. He says the Prime Minister's office will make in the next few hours announcements regarding travellers from the UK, outlined along those lines I was giving you just a moment ago.
Effectively, no holidays to France currently. Only French citizens returning, or if you're a British person living in France. I was actually supposed to be going, which was already cancelled, going to France this weekend as well. So lots of plans, but lots of people will be in similar situations. We have been asking you to get in touch on, you don't have a choice in that case, but we do have a choice over how to spend the next few days. And a very good morning to Stephen, who said, in common with your previous viewer, they're all going to watch The Snowman. We've just had our family gathering, they say. We too put our family before personal fears after assuring each other we were COVID-free. Well, Stephen, a very good morning to you. And another Stephen actually has got in touch. Simon, I think you can help. Where's your Christmas tree? It looks so sad in here. Simon did make one. It's really awful. And you've bent down the top, so you've got to put it on your laptop.
I put a star there.
That's the best we can do.
Without star, with star. Let me know. We'll make a decision on the set later on.
It's coming up to...
Thanks for that, Rosie. If I wasn't leaving, I certainly would be now.
20 minutes to 9. Coming up, have you got a loved one a special book this Christmas? Well, we're going to go through the best page-turners for the festive period after this.
You stitch me up.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to the programme. It's 20 minutes to 9. Now, we all use one of these to hold up. Well, it says to hold up. Hold it.
Oh, it worked in rehearsal. Try do it one more time.
Scrap that. We all use one of these. Our mobile phones. We rely on them to stay connected. Well, phone masts have also, until now, at least, generated much-needed ground rent for charities and community groups. But a new change in legislation has allowed mobile phone companies to cut that rent by almost 90% in order to speed up the rollout of 5G connectivity, leaving the community groups that rely on its income at risk.
Well, our South East reporter, Ellie Costello, joins us now to explain what on earth this all means and the background to it. Ellie, why would phone companies want to do this?
Good morning, Rosie and Simon. A nice one for that, Rosie. So this is all about the rollout of 5G, which I think lots of us can agree that it's very important that that happens in this country. I think all of us have been on dodgy Zoom connections. We could all do with a little bit more 5G in our lives. But this is all about a bit of legislation that came out in 2017, which basically allowed phone companies that own these phone masts to determine how much rent they charge or they pay to landowners where their phone masts are. So where they used to pay a couple of £1,000s a year, sometimes up to £10,000 a year, depending on the size of the phone mast, that can now be cut by up to 90%. So you're seeing some landowners that used to take in £10,000 a year could now be taking in as little as 100. So it is really detrimental to these community groups in which these phone masts are often positioned. Obviously, it usually goes down to somebody who has lots of land and could benefit from those thousands of pounds a year. So it is people we're talking about, such as farmers, community groups, even NHS hospitals. So I was speaking to a sports centre in Essex. This is the Willowsbrook Sports Centre. It's home to Billericay Rugby Club, and I spoke to the chairman there, who's seen a massive rent reduction. Let's have a little listen to what he had to say.
Essentially, they're paying about £8,240 each year. The new deal would see them pay £750 to us for each year. So we have a huge gas bill from obviously showers with 2 rugby teams playing here every week. We have costs for floodlights, costs, all sorts of different costs that we need to factor in. And without the money, essentially we're going to need to go out to parents to try and pay some more money, go out to the club members to try and pay some more money, and it's going to affect doing projects such as the cabin which you have over here, which is one project. The floodlights need to be redone, the pitches need lots of work and stuff, and it's going to affect what we can essentially do at the club. So just please think about all the work that goes in, the volunteers and the little people. We're all using your mobile phones, and we need the network, but we also need this money to run this local club.
Ellie, how widespread is this? How many groups are going to be affected?
Well, the idea is that the cheaper that rent is for these phone companies, that means more phone masks will be able to go up, and that means the 5G rollouts will happen quicker. That's the idea in theory, but there are hundreds of thousands of phone masts in the country. So if they're all cutting rent, you can imagine the number of groups, the number of farmers, the number of people that are going to be affected by this change in legislation. In fact, there's some research from the Centre of Economics and Business that says that community groups have collectively lost £209 million worth in rent since these changes began. And you just heard from Neil there, who says that that rent actually made up about 50 to 60% of the club's income. So they are going to really struggle now. They're going to have to sell a lot of bacon baps and coffees and teas on the side of a rugby match on a Sunday morning in order to make up that £18,000 that they used to have, that £8,000 that they used to have. And it's also worth noting that phone masts come with a lot of maintenance. They often need to dig up the roads in order to fix cables, and that does cause a lot of damage to these locations. So it's not something that somebody would take on easily. The community groups might have accepted a phone mast if they were receiving £8,000 a year, but now they're receiving about £700 a year. They don't think it's worth it. So after 4 years of consultation with the government, with landowners and with phone companies, there is going to be a second bill that's going to be mooted in Parliament before Christmas, and the government says it's going to make it fairer for landowners at that point. It's going to put in a bit of a complaints procedure so that landowners can protect themselves. But these landowners, these community groups are saying that it's like a David and Goliath battle, and they feel like the little men up against the big phone company giants.
But 5G is important, isn't it, nationally?
Yes, of course. I mean, we all need 5G, don't we? I mean, so many of us are working from home. We all rely on a speedy internet access. I think most people can agree that we do need that 5G rollout. But the problem is that companies would say there's no proof, landowners would say there's no proof that companies are putting their money in the 5G network. There's no way of testing that that rent money that they're all saving is actually being put towards 5G connectivity. I have spoken to EE, which is the company that put up the phone mast at Billericay Rugby Club, from Neil that you were just hearing from there. And EE have said we need good relationships with landlords as we share the common interest of delivering modern communications that support them and the communities in which they are based. But we must balance individual site negotiations with the national need to invest in connecting more people, especially in remote areas. And I also spoke to the campaign group Speed Up Britain, which supports this need for 5G connectivity in the UK. And they gave me this statement. They said digital connectivity is vital for millions across the country, which is why the government reformed the code to strike a balance between the revenue earned by individual landowners and enabling digital networks to be more cost effective. Before 2017, site rents were unsustainable. Now the pricing structure is more aligned. But campaigners say that their concern is obviously not knowing where that money is going. They want to make sure that it's going to the right place. And another thing to note is that in terms of the future, where will the incentive be for people to put phone masts up? When it was about £9,000 a year for a community group, that was a lot of money. That's something that they might be inclined to do. But if you're only going to be offered a couple of £100 a year, perhaps some people will note that it's just simply not worth it anymore. But for Neil Jarvis and the Billericay Rugby Club, they say they just want a fair rate and they want a going rate for ordinary people that are affected by this.
Ellie, thank you very much for that. It's Ellie Costello.
The Department of Culture, Media and Sport told GB News our priority is ending patchy mobile coverage in rural areas and giving people and businesses the connectivity they need. Our new laws will encourage faster and more collaborative negotiations between landowners and network operators, ensuring fair prices are agreed for the right to install equipment.
Well, as we get closer to Christmas, the best books are flying off the shelves. Currently, Pointless co-host Richard Osman, well, he takes the top spot with his novel, The Man Who Died Twice. But book critic Nick Coveney says after a survey that he helped run, a few surprises could be making their way into the festive favourites this season.
Well, let's find out what they could be. Joining us now is Nick himself, digital storyteller, content and UX expert. So surprise us then. What's on the list that we maybe would think wouldn't be there?
Well, we've already heard of Man Who Died Twice, which is top of our survey results and has been right at the top of the bestseller chart, so no surprises there. But some books you might not have been expecting to be at the top of the table. This Much Is True, which is the hilarious tell-all autobiography from Miriam Margolyes, well known for her often outspoken and sometimes highly inappropriate comments on late-night TV shows, and obviously her fantastic career as an actor. Third highest title that was at the top of our survey results was Midnight Lock by Jeffrey Deaver. So that is a very different tone to the other two, far sort of darker, grittier psychological thriller.
Comes Never by Ken Follett on 4.9%. The interesting thing in your survey, Nick, is that 54% of those surveyed said they're not interested in any of those.
Well, the thing is, there's hundreds of thousands, millions of brilliant books, and every year we have a new few 100,000 books published just in this country alone. So the choice, the range of books just goes up exponentially every year. I think the thing is, you know, at Christmas, book giving is such a wonderful pastime and a great way of people to show how well they know a person or how attuned they are to their likes or dislikes. So it doesn't surprise me that much. If anything, I think it's really stand out that the people at the top of our survey and their books charted so highly when there's so much choice.
Quickly, there's so many other choices of presents, and actually books didn't rate that highly, looking at your data of what people actually want for Christmas.
Well, it was third highest out of all of the categories in the survey, and I think that some of them, I mean, my company Rakuten Kobo also produce ebook readers, which are technically a tech device. So some of the categories are quite generic. I think the second highest one was tech, which could be anything from a toaster to a TV to a games console to an ebook reader. So that one was very broad. And I think the number one result was clothes, which, you know, everybody needs socks at Christmas. So I'm not going to contest that.
They don't always need elf sweaters, though, do they? Are you really wearing that?
I am.
Yeah,
it actually says all I want for Christmas is books.
Yeah. I walked into that, didn't I? My word.
You did. You did. I was ready for you.
Guilty as charged. Nick, really good to see you. Nick Coveney, thanks very much.
Thank you.
They also amazingly asked anyone if they would, I'm sure, just for some fun, if they want any coal, and 2% of people said yes.
5% wanted underwear. What do they do for the rest of the year? Right, anyway. Should we move on?
Let's move on, yes. It is 8 minutes to 9. Let's go back to the Ashes. Despite losing their captain to a COVID curfew before a ball was even bowled, it's very much been Australia's day so far after the second Ashes test got underway in Adelaide.
Yep, Captain Pat Cummins, he's in self-isolation after coming into contact with someone who's tested positive for COVID. But, well, let's hear, because Stuart Meaker, former England cricketer, is here with us now and is monitoring things for us. And as the appeared each hour, we've got more and more depressed. And you're going to do it again, aren't you?
Well, I'm not going to sit on the fence as much as I did the last hour. Sadly, there's nothing too positive to report. From an England's perspective, there was that one drop catch.
Sadly, nothing too positive. You mean we're being hammered, aren't we?
Well, you can never judge until both teams have had a chance to bat on the wicket. And I think, obviously, this wicket is quite slow at the moment. It's a little bit turgid. There is a little bit of turn already for Joe Root, and he's not the biggest turner of the ball.
This is a day-nighter, isn't it?
This is a day-nighter, so we did sort of think that was going to come into play conditions-wise, but it's showing some early signs of a little bit of turn, which... If you're an Australian fan, you'll be looking at lips at, because obviously Nathan Lyon being such a great spinner for Australia, him bowling on the 4th, 5th day on that wicket is going to become a very big factor if you're an England batsman.
Yeah, you were saying earlier you thought the spin might be important, weren't you?
What is important, which you educated me on earlier,
yes,
is as the conditions change and it goes into evening, that might now play to our advantage a little bit.
Yes, well, I mean, look, we've got Stuart Broad and James Anderson, two very good from you, Rosie, yes, in fact.
Thank you for the compliment. moments. I like this. I need this.
You pick it up quickly. Yes, so they're going to come
2 hours
play hopefully,
from zero.
Hopefully in the evening session. Also, once we get the new ball as well, it might start to swing a little bit as the conditions come into play with helping that along. So,
one great catch, one not so great catch.
I say not so great catch. It was a tough chance, to be fair to Joss, but having taken the one that he did earlier, you would probably think that he should have taken this one. It was a slightly easier chance diving to his opposite side. So, yeah, a bit sad from an England point of view because it was Marnus Labuschagne, as you like to say, Simon.
Well,
Labuschagne,
don't you?
Labuschagne if you're South African,
Indeed.
which is where he's from, but Australia won't agree with that. But yes, sad that he's not out because he's a big part of the Aussies team.
Now, what England do have, of course, Stuart Broad, Jimmy Anderson, and at the moment, it's not quite enough.
Yeah, I think just looking at the England attack as a whole, they're missing Mark Wood. So it's interesting to know whether they've rested him for his ankle troubles, and they've had that as a big part of his management over the years. But it just means that attack becomes a little bit too one-dimensional. They need a little bit of extra pace in there to try and force a mistake from the batsman. At the moment, it's just very attritional, hit the spot, line and length, which is important, but sometimes at the top level, when you've got batsmen as good as they have in Australia, you need a point of difference.
Right, you better go back and cheer yourself up and watch more. Stuart Meeker, really good to see you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for joining us.
Can't wait to go. Look, desperate to watch. Don't apologise, it's fine.
No, he's here for the rest of the morning.
It's like all the viewers, they're walking out. Right, that's it. Up next, the briefing with Darren McCaffrey. Join us again. Well, it won't be us, but the programme's back at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Have a good day.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. Another grey day for the vast majority, but another dry day for most of us as well. There is some rain across northern parts of Scotland that'll only slowly peter out. That's being caused by this weather front, but it's this chunky area of high pressure that's been moving in for the past 24 hours and